Majority Report with Sam Cedar, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
It is Friday, January 31st, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, it's Casual Friday, but we're loaded up, folks. I'm not even wearing a collar today. Joining us from the program All In with Chris Hayes will be Chris Hayes from that same program. Also, from wait, what are they? They have a name for that weekend thing? What is it? Deadspin's like Deadspin.
We'll find out.
Oh, all right. Well, David Roth will be here, formerly of Deadspin, or of the former Deadspin. And also calling us live from the Sundance Film Festival for the second time is our film reporter, Matthew Film Guy. Also on the program today, Lamar Alexander says no witnesses, giving Susan Collins a free vote and enabling Mitch McConnell his cover-up. With Iowa 3 days away, Sanders now neck and neck with Biden nationally and beats Trump even when he is described as a socialist. In fact, it helps. Meanwhile, Trump administration pulls the trigger. Block grants coming to Medicaid. Meanwhile, cuts to that to follow. Don't know what's going on with our music. There we go. State Department warns against China travel over the coronavirus. Don't worry, Trump says this will all have a good ending for us. Brexit is on. The British are leaving. The British are leaving. It's going to take about 11 months, but they've jumped over the cliff, ladies and gentlemen. Meanwhile, the U.S. has dropped a record number of bombs in Afghanistan in 2019. Congratulations. House repeals the 2002 Iraq authorization for use of military force, not to be confused with the 2001. And it turns out that Igor Fruman is a longtime buddy with Paul Manafort. That's weird. Senate investigators interview an IRS whistleblower about interference with a Pence and Trump audit. Meanwhile, the New York writer who accuses Trump of rape now is seeking his DNA as part of a suit. Pete Buttigieg's Spanish website is in English, and John Delaney exits the race. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Ladies and gentlemen, let me get this out of the way and apologize for the quality of my voice. I don't think I'm sick, but it's possible. We have lost at least one of our staff members to the flu. Jamie is sick. You might want to reach out to her on Twitter. Michael is out today. Brendan and Matt are here. I am here too. I don't sound well, but I feel fine. So the suffering, I can assure you, will be all yours, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get to this quick. Joe Biden now, apparently his staff has caught on and realizes that we cannot allow Joe Biden to get into a situation where he attempts to beat up voters who come up and ask him a question. He's so mad that Bernie Sanders has reminded people that Joe Biden spent the vast majority of his career bragging about his desire and his ability to cut Social Security, because that's what made him a tough guy. He was going to do the hard decisions, going to make the hard choices, and that is to cut Social Security for other people, not for him, of course, but I mean for other people. And they've wised up, and now they have given him when I first heard the story, I thought they had given him a talking point sheet that he's supposed to use but instead of he can't even deliver it. He just hands it to the people. Watch this.
Mr. Biden, just a clarification on Social Security record from earlier.
A little bit of an answer.
An issue out of it.
For you.
What is this?
Mr. Vice President, do you think Bernie Sanders would be a risk for the party?
You'd ask, so I decided to write it up for you, so you knew.
Thank you. But how should voters consider this?
So what happened is, I think it was a reporter said, well, what do you say about your record on Social Security? And Biden gives him a card and says, we knew you were going to ask, so we wrote it up for you. And we did we zoomed in on what this card said. And here it is. Oh, no, where's the top part? Yeah, there it is. Okay. It says Bernie false attack on Social Security. Oh, Security. Hi, if I've handed this to you, I am probably lost. Is there any chance you know where my car is? If not, do you mind leading me to the nearest political staff looking guy? Come on, man. Hey, Betty Boop, go vote for someone else, okay, Corn Pop? The hair on my legs are only now drying. That's a very weird message he's trying to put out there to fight back on the Social Security thing.
I don't think he's getting good advice from his staff.
I think it was a mistake to have a card written up, but this is not what I would write. Let's actually go into the actual card, because we can see it. We can freeze frame it, and it's worth seeing what it is. His talking points are. He's even though they have taken the time to write this, he's lying. I'm sorry, folks. It's just he's lying. It says Bernie false attack on Social Security. All right, just give me one more frame so I can get it straight. Okay, the video ignored the complete passage, which showed Biden wanted Social Security and Medicare protected. PolitiFact called it false. Who cares? Paul Krugman called it a smear. I don't care. And the fact is that when they would say stuff like, we want Social Security and Medicare protected, the way that they would do this, yeah, here it is. We want Social Security and Medicare protected. The way that they would do this when they wanted to cut Social Security was they say, like, for the sake of saving Social Security, we need to cut it. I mean, so much so, I don't know if people remember this story, but when the outfit Social Security Works about, I don't know when it was, maybe it was in 2009 or 2010, I can't remember exactly, proposed something to the effect, I can't remember what their slogan was, but it was basically accepting the premise that there was something broken with Social Security. And the fact is that Social Security and Medicare you don't need to say, I need to protect it. Like there's no, like, they wanted to keep it up. I mean, it's a lie. Paul Ryan, here's the quote. Paul Ryan was correct when he did the tax code. What's the first thing he decided we had to go after, Biden said, with a slight smirk. And then Biden leaned into the microphone and said in deep menacing, Social Security, Medicare. If you listen to the audio, Biden appears to be mocking right. Who wrote this? Oh, his own campaign. It appears. We need to do something about Social Security and Medicare. And he sarcastically whispered, that's the only way you can find room to pay for it. What? There's something missing from that whole exchange. Forget it. I mean, the bottom line is, look, you've seen the videos we've played. Literally almost dozens of people. I mean, dozens of footage of him bragging to Tim Russert. Him sitting on the Senate floor. I'm the guy who says freeze all this stuff. When you freeze a program that is designed to match the inflation rate, what you're doing is you're cutting the spending power and the buying power of those people. That's a cut to Social Security. That's what a cut is. All right. Let me first get to this to you, and then we'll get to Chris Hayes. Hey, one of today's sponsors is News Voice, which is the first ever entirely open, crowdsourced, and democratized platform for news. You can download the app for free at newsvoice.com. Listen, we know that the vast majority of news in this country is owned by the same 5 huge corporations. It's important for you to be a critical reader of the news. You need to know who owns it, where it's coming from, what their perspectives are. And the best way to do that is to look at multiple sources at the same time about the same story. That is how you become a critical news reader. And that's exactly what News Voice helps you keep track of. It's a free crowdsourced website and mobile app, lets you create personalized news feeds, maintain a clear picture of where your news is coming from and what political slants may exist. It helps you aggregate from news from corporate outlets, international outlets, local news, independent media, giving access to every side of the story. News Voice is fueled by its community of users who contribute to the platform by fact-checking, submitting stories and sources that are missing, upvoting stories, and writing story summaries. You can also comment on stories and debate politics with other members of the community. And through staying active in the community, you can level up and earn perks on the platform. News Voice Plays feature allows you to listen to your personal news feed every day through customizable audio news playlists. It's your own personally tailored radio station for news. News Voice is a next generation news aggregator and social media platform that values transparency, good journalism, and productive political discussions. You can get totally free access by going to newsvoice.com/majority. We have a link underneath this. If you're watching on video too, we got it on YouTube rather. You're watching on video on YouTube. Jeez. Or if you're listening, we have it in the podcast description. And I should also tell you, Majority Report's possible thanks to sponsors like Skillshare. And actually, I owe Skillshare a lot more than that, too. Picking up a bunch of new skills, little marketing tricks and techniques. Seeing it every day. And anybody who goes to skl.sh/majority-report-5 is going to get 2 entire months of totally free access to Skillshare's entire library of thousands of online classes. It's an online learning community for everybody from creatives to freelance business owners to people who just want to get better at their hobby or learn a brand new hobby. Skillshare's classes range from illustration, painting, graphic design, photography. I have upped significantly my iPhone photography. It's all about composition and et cetera, just being aware of what you're doing in many respects. Video editing, web design, bookkeeping, marketing, productivity, everything in between. Skillshare's video lessons let you learn at your own pace and you can fit into any schedule. They have classes for all skill levels, whether you're already a master of what you do or you're just getting started. I can tell you right now, my plan for the weekend, I don't have the kids. I'm coming into the office. I'm doing some work around here. We got a little mini dishwasher. I'm going to hook that thing up and I'm going to play. I've got actually 4 different ones lined up right now, but I'm not sure which ones I'll do. But I'm going to do content calendars made easy, save time and develop a personal brand. Now, I don't know what that's about, but if it means like a way that we can schedule our content, better for us. And then I think I'm going to take the productivity masterclass where I create a custom system that works. Boom. Take that, ladies and gentlemen. And there are chapters, so if I have to stop for a minute or I need to go back, it's super easy. And you don't have to pay per class. A membership to Skillshare gives you access to each and every class they offer, so you never run out of ways to fuel your curiosity. Like I say, most of the classes are around 60 minutes, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more, and they're in chapters, super easy. Make 2020 a year where you explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. Skillshare makes it easier than ever, folks. Best part is membership is less than $10 a month. But because you listen to the Majority Report, you can have 2 entire months of free membership to Skillshare with full access to all their classes when you go to skl.sh/Majority Report 5. That's the number 5. Put the link in the podcast notes under this video if you're watching on YouTube, as always. Folks, just a reminder, too. This program relies on your support. When you become a member of the Majority Report at jointhemajorityreport.com, you not only get you're supporting the free show, you get extra content every day, and we also have bonuses, and we got a lot of bonus stuff coming up. We're doing a lot of live coverage in the next week. We're doing a ton of live coverage, and then in the weeks to follow, there's going to be a lot of live coverage of, like, I don't know, debates, elections, State of the Union addresses, and we generally keep those for members too. You can see it live or you can listen later as a member. So join themajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget the AM Quickie. People, that thing is exploding now. People are loving it. It's getting out the door, 8 a.m., 5 or 6 minutes. Get all the headlines. You get to hear, this is how my voice usually sounds in the morning. So today it was even worse, though. All right, quick break. When we come back, Chris Hayes. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome back to the program. He is the host of All In with Chris Hayes, author of Colony Within a Nation and The Twilight of the Elite, 2 books that you should absolutely read. Chris Hayes. Chris, welcome back to the program.
Sam, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing okay. As you can hear, my voice is a little bit tried.
This voice is a little shot, huh?
Yeah, it is a little bit. And I just want to say, you don't get enough credit for this, but Twilight of the Elite saw what was coming down the pike quite a ways. People should go back and read that book.
It's funny. I go back to that book. There are some things I definitely got wrong in that book, but the stuff that I got right, I got really right. Like there's a chapter in there basically about like knowledge and disinformation, and it's about WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and how we form our knowledge. And I spent a lot of time actually in that chapter on the ClimateGate fiasco, which was these hacked emails of a obscure climate research center in the UK that then became like this like completely manufactured scandal that they were like cooking the books. It resulted in a whole bunch of investigations. The Murdoch machine on both sides of the Atlantic went into, and it's completely a playbook for the kinds of disinformation campaigns we've seen since then.
Yeah. And that was WikiLeaks too, wasn't it?
What's that?
That was WikiLeaks as well.
It was weird. We never actually found out who the hackers are, although the sort of circumstantial evidence points to Russia. But they posted, whoever hacked it posted their own thing, a la Guccifer. So it was a very similar situation because the Russia hacks first appear through a Guccifer site that's kind of clunky and bad, and then WikiLeaks ends up posting it as well, and they're much more easily accessible. Right.
Interesting. That a lot of that has been lost to recent history, I guess. But that was people forget that dominated the news for like 3 years.
It really did.
It was nuts.
And it also put a bunch of climate scientists through the ringer.
Michael Mann.
There's cost to that stuff when you get a target painted on your back.
All right. Well, so today we don't know for sure, but it certainly appears based upon what Lamar Alexander said last night, or a statement he released, that we're not going to hear witnesses. I want to get into the politics about it in a first, but let's first hear this quote from Alan Dershowitz, because this is the one that, I think this is just sort of stunning. And, you know, Tim Worster, was it? No, it's not Super Worster. It's the
Tim Wu.
Right. I know. He said that he took Dershowitz's class at Harvard, and he said that there is something to the like there is, you know, the most ethical thing to do as a defense attorney is to throw out. Just to not recognize any ethics in the pursuit of the defense of your
just do whatever right up to the line.
And I think that's what this is an example of, except for he's playing with the entire future of the country in some ways with this. Here's Alan Dershowitz.
Yesterday, I had the privilege of attending the rolling out of a peace plan by the President of the United States regarding the Israel-Palestine conflict. And I offered you a hypothetical the other day. What if a Democratic president were to be elected and Congress were to authorize much money to either Israel or the Palestinians, and the Democratic president were to say to Israel, no, I'm going to withhold this money unless you stop all settlement growth, or to the Palestinians, I will withhold the money Congress authorized to you unless you stop paying terrorists. And the president said, quid pro quo. If you don't do it, you don't get the money. If you do it, you get the money. There's no one in this chamber that would regard that as in any way unlawful. The only thing that would make a quid pro quo unlawful is if the quo were in some way illegal. Now,
pause it for 1 second. All right. Now, let's just stop it here because, A, in this scenario, right, the president wouldn't be doing it in secret. Right. And B, it's not a question of the quo being illegal. The act of doing a quid pro quo and withholding money itself is unlawful. We know that at this point. And that's
the thing that I was screaming at the television while I was watching it, is that, and I've been saying this all along, take away, there are sort of three components. There's the trying to get them to interfere in the elections, even if there wasn't a quid pro quo, itself is, I think impeachable. Then there's upholding the money, which itself is unlawful. And then there's exchanging the two for each other. So yes, can you imagine actually, like, think about this for a second. It would be, I don't know if it would result in impeachment, but if aid was passed by both houses and signed by the president, and then a Democratic president unilaterally upheld aid to Israel, you think that wouldn't be a big deal?
And
like, what are you talking about?
We're not even acknowledging the fact that Trump did this in secret. We have every single agency that's involved in this process signing off and wondering what the hell's going on. If Barack Obama had held back aid in secret for Israel, or for, like that, they wouldn't get this far. They would somehow figure out a way of impeaching him before it even got to the Senate. I mean, they would convict him. It would have been nuts. But let's continue here, because this is the sleight of hand. He's saying when the quo is illegal. But go ahead.
Were in some way illegal. Now, we talked about motive. There are three possible motives that a political figure can have. One, a motive in the public interest, and the Israel argument would be in the public interest.
Pause it for 1 second. Now, this is also a sleight of hand here, too, with the idea of in the public interest. They're not giving. This is policy. This is stated statutory policy, right? Like laws were passed. That's how the money gets there. This is not just a vague notion of what is in the public interest. This is something very specific.
Also, he could have, this is the thing I always say, he could have vetoed the bill. He signed the bill. Like, that's the thing that drives you so crazy when they say, well, the president has discretion, the president policy this and policy that. Like, he signed the bill. Right? Like, yes, the way the president can say is like, I am vetoing he's done this on Saudi Arabia 3 times. He's vetoed things passed by both houses of Congress to protect Mohammed bin Salman's campaign to basically grind Yemenis into dust and kill hundreds of thousands of them. He can do that. He can veto, he can veto bills. But the point of this is that he freaking signed the bill, so it was the law.
Continue.
The second is in his own political interest, and the third, which hasn't been mentioned, would be in his own financial interest, his own pure financial interest, just putting money in the bank. I want to focus on the second one for just one moment. Every public official that I know believes that his election is in the public interest. And mostly you're right. Your election is in the public interest.
Pause it. Now, wait a second. So now it has gone from policy, that law that is passed, signed by the president, as you say, has turned into public interest. And then he defines public interest as just sort of like something that happens relative to the public. Like not even to the public's benefit, but rather just like they're interested in it. Like go back here, like he's slid. It's amazing how much he's slid these definitions over the course of just seconds.
Yes.
Putting money in the bank. I want to focus on the second one for just one moment. Every public official that I know believes that his election is in the public interest. And mostly you're right. Your election is in the public interest. And if a president does something which he believes will help him get elected in the public interest, that cannot be the kind of quid pro quo that results in impeachment.
Well, he's done so many sleight of hands that by the end of it, he's gotten to a place that's manifestly absurd, right? Because what he has done is through this sort of slippery transmutation of his definitions, he has ended up in a place where definitionally a politician views their reelection in the national interest, and the ergo definitionally pursuing said reelection can never be a corrupt intent. I mean, obviously that's ridiculous.
Well,
obviously.
But it also means that the only way a president can do something that is worthy of impeachment is presumably if he is in his second term, right, when he can't get reelected. Like there's a story today about Senate investigators interviewing IRS whistleblower because allegedly a Treasury official came in and interfered with the audit of Trump and Pence. But how could one not argue that Trump interfering with that wouldn't be in the public interest?
Right. Exactly.
I mean,
exactly. And I mean, people have also used the Watergate example, right? Like, look, if you think that, it is in the national interest for McGovern to lose, right? I mean, and clearly Nixon did. I mean, Nixon thought it would be bad for the country if McGovern won. And then you have a bunch of burglars go bug the offices of the DNC. Like, you're doing that for, I guess, the national interest under Dershowitz's conception.
I think basically everything is okay in that instance. But also, if you're just talking about the public interest, not only do politicians think that it's in the public interest that they get reelected, but it's also, I would imagine most politicians think it's in the public interest that the public loves them and doesn't think that they've done anything wrong. Right. So like every cover up would also be perfectly legal because it would hurt the nation if people knew. I mean, under these terms, why wouldn't you exonerate Bill Clinton? Because of course it was in the public's interest that they didn't know the
for them not
details.
To know about what happened, because that would damage the Democratic Party. That he thinks it's in the national interest to keep its hand on government.
Well, just everything that we were told about, what are we going to tell the kids? Which we heard over and over again, and we would,
God.
I mean, that was the big rallying cry of the Republicans at the time. So that is, and the thing that's really horrific about that is not only does this is going to set a precedent, right? I mean, this goes down in history as the reason because Lamar Alexander basically said that there's no need for more evidence to prove something that has already been proven, but that does not meet the United States Constitution for a high bar for an impeachable offense. He's using this argument by Dershowitz.
Yes, I mean, I think he's using a version of it. I'm not sure. Like, I think that it's funny. I had a different reaction to the Alexander statement than a lot of people, which is that I guess I never expected him to break, but I actually weirdly found it satisfying that he at least stipulates, like, I found the gaslighting infuriating and insane, that for hours of people going up there trying to tell us that, like, Trump cares about corruption or that this wasn't done for his reelection, when, like, it's just so, I mean, obviously it is. Like, stop talking to us like we're idiots. Stop trying to say that, like, day is night and night is day. At least Alexander basically stipulates that, right? At least Alexander says, yeah, they proved their case. And it's like, I felt some weird relief that, like, thank you for not, like, it's the crazy pills feeling that you have watching these people lying and utter bad faith about, well, the president's really concerned about corruption and, well, he wanted a burden sharing. I mean, give me a fucking break. Like, so at least Alexander, the more, in some ways, it's like more defensible to me in a weird way to be like, this was wrong and inappropriate, but not worthy of removal, and he did the thing that he's accused of.
Here is the part where I think Alexander does his sleight of hand. This is paragraph 3. This is paragraph 3. It was, quote, this is a quote, "It was inappropriate for the president to ask a foreign leader to investigate his political opponent and to withhold United States aid to encourage that investigation." Like you say, he is admitting the facts there. And then he goes on to say, "When elected officials inappropriately interfere with such investigations, it undermines the principle of equal justice under the law." And then he goes on to say, "But the Constitution does not give the Senate power to remove the president from office and ban him from this year's ballot simply for actions that are inappropriate." The issue is not that he interfered with an investigation. There was no investigation.
Right.
And in fact, the evidence suggests that he didn't even want an investigation. He just wanted an announcement about the investigation.
He wanted an interview on Fareed Zakaria.
Well, this is where Lamar Alexander lies and does his own.
Oh, no, I do. Yes, I'm not. Yes, I totally agree with that. I'm not taking Alexander off the hook.
Right.
I'm just like, the one silver lining was at least you're not, like, you know, pissing on me and telling me it's raining. Like,
well, but wait a second. No, he's saying I'm pissing on you, but it's also raining.
No, that's true.
But it's also raining.
That's
what
right.
He's saying here.
That's right. That's what he's saying. I'm pissing on you, and it's also raining.
Right. You can't feel the pee because it's raining too.
Right. That's right. You can't tell where the wetness is coming from.
He's just changing the gaslight here because he's just saying, here are the facts. He's saying I agree. It is 2 + 2, and that definitely equals 5. And that's where he's getting off. This is not about interfering with investigation. This is about interfering with an election.
That's right, and that becomes the issue. I mean, it's been the issue from the beginning. Like, the broader context of this, as someone who covered this day in, day out throughout all of 2019, and often talked with you about it, like, the Democrats did not want to impeach Donald Trump. They didn't want to do it. Nancy Pelosi didn't want to do it. Hakeem Jeffries didn't want to do it. I think Nadler probably did and was sort of being, you know, they were putting raised, but Schiff certainly didn't. The thing that made them break the glass and pull the emergency brake was, holy shit, he's going to rig the next election. And so, like, that's the thing at the center of this entire thing, and the reason that, like, an election isn't a remedy is that the fear is that it won't be a free and fair election.
That's right.
Like, that's the problem. The mechanism, the mechanism at the center, the reason that this rose to the level of impeachable from Democrats, and who did not want to do this, was a realization of, like, holy shit, he is going to use the presidency to rig the next election, and so being like, look, we got an election in 8 months or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, we got an election in 8 months. That, I don't know, like, Mohammed bin Salman is going to be, like, you know, sending his, like, hackers to, like, bring down the Democratic nominee. Like, awesome.
Well, and this is the thing, is that I first of all, I mean, if it was up to Giuliani, I mean, I think at this point, like, Giuliani has exposed himself as a raving lunatic, and to a certain extent, I think, like, the Democrats have to some extent inoculated themselves. Or inoculated if Joe Biden, and I think everybody's clear that I don't want Joe Biden to be the nominee, but if Joe Biden's the nominee, there is at least some inoculation to they're going to continue to pursue this. I mean, they're going to just figure out another way of claiming that there's new evidence, you know, about Joe Biden. But they've really done their work in terms of laying down the narrative. The other thing that occurs to me, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, from a political standpoint, let's just turn to that, because assuming that Mitch McConnell is able to wrangle the votes to end this today, Donald Trump will be able to do his Super Bowl interview and do the State of the Union address and tout how he was completely exonerated by the Senate. And Dershowitz did a great job, and he's going to pre-pardon him for all his massages or whatever it is. What do you think the political implications are of this going forward?
So the sort of annoyingly boring answer is that I think it's probably mostly a stalemate, which is to say, like, it's not really determinative in either direction. That said, I think the witness vote is harder than the acquittal vote. And I think that, like, I was talking to someone the other day about, Schumer, like, we were talking about Schumer holding the caucus, right, together. And Schumer's definitely going to hold everyone on the witness vote. There's no question with Jones, Sinema, Manchin, right, who are probably the three most likely to bolt. Doug Jones in Alabama, Joe Manchin in West Virginia, and Kristen Sinema in Arizona. That's an easy vote for them. The witness vote is an easy vote. Like, yeah, we should hear more people. Right. And the converse is that it's not a great vote for Cory Gardner. And I think that there's a reason that Susan Collins, who's got enough sort of independence from Trump in terms of her political base, is probably going to vote for witnesses and then go back to Maine and be like, look at me, I'm independent. So I think the witness vote is a bad vote for them. And I think that the acquittal vote probably doesn't. The acquittal vote after that doesn't help. And particularly we don't want witnesses, we're acquitting him, and then Bolton 3-4 weeks later is on television being like, yes, he did exactly what he's accused of. Like, I think that's a pretty bad political situation for Trump. I also think there's like a motivating factor here. I do think there's something about just watching people and talking to people. I was talking to people on the subway on my ride in. That's happened sometimes. Like the sort of feeling of impotent rage coming right as the campaign season starts. I don't think it's like the worst thing for like people to be reminded of the stakes here.
Right.
You know, like in the broad anti-Trump coalition, which is a very broad coalition and very unwieldy because it includes people from Bill Kristol to Marxist Leninists. So I think that like the reminder of the sort of fundamental stakes here going literally right into election season is also not the worst thing. And the last thing I'll say is, this entire thing, the thing that it reminds me most of is Kavanaugh, right? Where it's like at a certain level, the conclusions seem foreordained, and then there's these developments that make it seem like, oh, maybe there's some little crack, and then the foreordained conclusion ends up happening, right? And I don't like Kavanaugh, though. The difference in Kavanaugh is Kavanaugh really rallied a certain segment of people on the right who aren't crazy about Trump, but who really were like ride or die for Kavanaugh. And I don't think impeachment has done the same. I think impeachment has really activated the Trump people, but I don't think it's had that broader rallying effect. And it's also like 8 months before the election. So I feel like in the balance of motivation, particularly once impeachment ends, I think a sort of mantle of like righteous rage passes to people who feel wronged by the decision that is not like the worst thing in the universe. Again, I'm looking for silver linings here because I think it's genuinely like dangerous and perilous where we are. I want to be very clear on that. But purely on the politics, I don't think that like it's terrible politics, terribly politically for the sort of anti-Trump coalition.
No, I think, and I would add to that, just broadly speaking, had the Democrats not impeached, I'm convinced it would have demoralized a huge segment of, maybe not huge, but a significant segment of Democratic voters.
Yes, agreed.
Because, we're going to go into this, like, in terms of like Trump, we're going into this election where he's going to try and suppress votes. And if you start with the narrative of Democrats are just not going to fight in any way, I think then it gives him a leg up.
And I felt the same way about Kavanaugh. Like I felt the way about Kavanaugh, which is that like you got to fight. You got like you don't have the numbers, you don't have the votes, but you fight and you fight and you fight and you fight. You do what you think is right, and you make the case, and you push as far as you can. And then if you lose, you lose, but you got to lose fighting. And like that. And if you don't fight, if you just roll over, that says to people that are trying to vote, like people understand the math of the votes, right? Like people get that. Like we've never removed a president through an impeachment vote. In fact, as I pointed out earlier today, no U.S. senator has ever voted to remove a president of their own party in American history, right? So like the math here was always clear, but that doesn't mean you don't fight. You got to fight.
It used to be during like the Bush years. That was the rallying cry of the activist base. Was there are fights that are worth losing. Like, I mean, that it's okay to lose these fights because not only what you get out of it, but just the exercise itself. I contend that, and let's play this Martha McSally ad, because this is when they don't vote for the witnesses. Like, this is one of those few times in my mind where process is going to make a difference, because there are a bunch of like purple state, if you will, Republican senators who are on the cusp. And this is going to cut in to those folks who want to see some independence from Trump and want to see just the process is done properly. Those people generally I cannot stand, but in this instance, it might be valuable. Here is one of those ads from the Never Trumper organization, who people will have to sort of suck up the praise for John McCain and Barry Coldwater in this. Yeah. But again,
well, they know who their audience is. It's
that's
not the
exactly.
Worst, it's not the dumbest. It's relatively smart for the audience it's targeted at.
From my perspective, this is the only constituency that these Never Trumpers ever had in the first place is Republicans, not Democrats. But here,
yes, correct.
Martha McSally, Arizona rejected you in 2018. And you know why. You were too close to Donald Trump. And you lost badly. Now you've gone full Trump. Again.
Man, you're a liberal hack. I'm not talking to you.
You knew Arizona wanted the truth. We demanded witnesses and evidence in the trial of Donald Trump. Oh, there's a reason your poll numbers are dropping fast. And you're on your way to defeat. Oh, that's right, Martha. Again. Arizona has always produced mavericks, true independents. People like John McCain and Barry Goldwater, senators that served Arizona, people of courage, toughness. They stood for what was right, no matter the political risk. And they are remembered as American heroes. And you, Martha, you'll be remembered as just another Trump hack. If you're remembered at all.
That ad, I mean...
I like the ad. I just wish that the voiceover had a little more contempt in it.
Yeah.
You know, like I just feel like if I was giving the notes in that read, I would have been like, just ramp it up. You're only at a 7 now. I need it at a 15.
It's like Elizabeth Taylor and a cat on a hot tin roof. I mean, it's really sort of like just it's literally like you imagine like some suburban Republican voter who's sitting there like 3 drinks into martinis, and just Martha McSally walks in and is like, oh, look who showed up. But they did another ad like this for Cory Gardner, which had the same sort of like, which was the same mirror thing. Like, you're a wimp, you're Donald Trump's like, bitch or something. Like, I don't even know if it said that, but it certainly felt like that's what it said. And I think that's going to resonate with this very, very narrow band of would-be Republican voters.
Yeah, I think, yes, I do think that's right. I mean, I think, I tend to think process is not what is going to kill you. And I also think that they're not, I think they're stuck in a tough place, McSally and Gardner particularly, politically, not like, in any larger sense. But, they can't, I think voting for witnesses is like voting to like get more information that will make voting for acquittal harder, right? So, which like, I think they have to vote for acquittal, and I think they're probably right, because you got to take your shot if you're McSally and Gardner going with the MAGA base, because distancing yourself from it leaves you stuck between first and second base, right?
Right.
Like, you got to either like be like this independent maverick or full Trump, and they don't really have the guts or the base or the ability to go full maverick. So I don't think they're necessarily making the wrong call in politically, again, narrowly politically in voting against witnesses. However, there is a cost to pay for that, and Democrats should deliver that cost, right? And I thought that, the Goldwater-McCain stuff's fascinating, right? Because Goldwater is famously the person that leads the delegation of Republican senators to the White House to inform Richard Nixon that he's going to lose a removal vote in the Senate for the first time in American history, which prompts his resignation. And it was a big deal. Obviously, Goldwater is a pillar of the Republican Party and a stalwart conservative. And John McCain, very famously, at 2 a.m, gives the thumbs down to the ACA repeal vote, killing the top domestic legislative priority for Trump. And, those two moments did involve some independence and courage, whatever you think about the two men otherwise. Right. It genuinely did. And it genuinely is a thing that a certain kind of voter in an identity sense wants to associate with himself, right? Fair-minded, not like a hack and not partisan and in the center, but mavericky. That has an appeal to a certain kind of voter, particularly in that state, that particularly Martha McSally has to win. And so I think this absolutely hurts her.
I've met a lot of people like that over the years. They're usually men. They're usually sort of libertarian leaning. They listen to NPR to say that they listen to both sides. And I think it is a question of how they want to perceive themselves. And I think that is
exactly.
And I think that is that. And I literally think there's not a ton of these people, but if the Democrats, I'm convinced, if the Democrats take the Senate, it is going to be because of these votes. Is going to be one of the sort of last straw on the camel's back for these senators.
And we should be, one thing I think is really important when you think about the politics of this year and this moment is that there's lots of different sub-constituencies that Democrats need to do better with at the margins, right? In different places geographically. I saw this fascinating map yesterday that was where people who made between, I want to say it was $20,000 and $40,000 or $40,000 and $60,000. It was a map of the states, right? And of 2016 of whether Trump or Clinton won. And there's this huge range depending on the state, right? Because there's these different, it's not one electorate. It's just a million different electorates. So what message works against Cory Gardner in Colorado Springs or what works against Martha McSally in the Tucson suburbs is different than what might work in Kenosha, Wisconsin, right? Yeah. In fact, I think is almost certainly, and different than what works in Detroit or in Philadelphia. You need to do better among all these different segments, both in turnout and in persuasion, and they're different groups with different things they care about. So it just, the key for Democrats, and particularly when you think about both the sort of national electoral college math and the state by state map, and then the frontline House districts, is that there's just lots of different constituencies. I think there's some, swing voters or voters that you need to win in Wisconsin who could give a shit about impeachment.
Oh,
right?
no. I totally agree. I totally agree. That's why this is.
But then there's some voters in the Tucson suburbs, right, who live in Scottsdale that are exactly the kind you described. So you just this is not rocket science, but reaching these different constituencies, particularly when you're talking about a coalition that is so much more diverse on one side than the other side, right? that's the difficult task the Democrats have before them.
I agree, but I think the thing is that there is nobody running for Senate who's got to reach those people in Wisconsin and in Kenosha.
Correct,
and
exactly.
Tucson.
Yes,
that's why I think
Yep.
This impeachment story has always been about the Senate races. I don't think the implications. I mean, I think that the absence of impeachment would have caused a lot of problems because all this crap about Biden. This would have gone on, and that if they decide by April or May that it's going to be Bernie or Warren or Buttigieg, all of a sudden we're going to hear about the Ukrainians getting involved in that too. I mean, there's no reason to believe that they didn't have we're just gonna do this horribly corrupt thing to ensure our sense against Biden. But if it's any other Democrat, we're going to definitely play by the rules. That calculus, I don't think was happening anywhere.
Nope.
And so I think there was a cost to pay to not impeach, as well as with Democratic enthusiasm. But to the extent that there's any gains, I think it's going to be exclusively in terms of the Senate. Arguably, maybe the House in certain areas, but more the Senate, because I think this stuff is basically shook out in the House. I don't think there's really any room to pick anything up in too many spaces.
I totally agree. I think that's exactly right. When you look at the map, there are a few places where there's probably 4 or 5 like real good frontline targets, but then there's a bunch they got to defend too. I mean, some of those districts, Kendra Horn's district in Oklahoma, that's like a plus 11 Trump district.
Yep.
Plus 15, like that's a tough defend. Like they won some seats that were really at the sort of reaches in 2018. So yeah, I think the House is I don't see the House moving a ton in either direction. The Senate obviously is a big, and that's also where these key votes go. And I don't think, again, in the sort of sum total all of this, like making them take all those tough votes, Joni Ernst, Susan Collins, Cory Gardner, Martha McSally, Tom Tillis, all 5 of those people are up.
Loeffler too is it Loeffler in Georgia? The newly appointed senator. I mean, she had to tack far to the right because of Collins jumping into the race, and she was appointed specifically because she wasn't Collins, and she's gonna have to turn into him to get through this jungle primary, I think.
Yep. And oh, by the way, I am so fascinated with that race because we know that Trump wanted Collins.
Yep.
Collins has been his, we call him, he's one of the basement boys. That's like the Doug Collins, Matt Gaetz, Jim Jordan, who are always doing the press huddles in the basement outside the House Intel room.
Yeah.
And he's a basement boy, and Trump loves him some basement boys, and so he wanted Collins. He was sort of prevailed upon by Mitch McConnell and others to not back Collins, and then Collins was like, screw it. So he's going to primary him, and they're going to desperately try to keep Trump out of it. But it's going to be Roy Moore, Luther Strange all over again, which is the president endorsed Luther Strange in that Alabama primary, but the MAGA heads knew who the MAGA candidate was.
Yep.
They understood that Roy Moore was the MAGA guy. They're not idiots. Trump could go there and, record his sort of hostage video endorsements for Luther Strange, but no one was fooled there, and it's going to be the same thing in Georgia. He could go and say Kelly Loeffler is strong on Second Amendment, loves our vets, tough on crime, whatever his hilarious control paste endorsement is for everyone. And every Georgia Republican knows that Doug Collins is the real MAGA candidate.
Yep. All right, I got 2 more quick questions. I know you got to jump, but one, do you think the Democrats continue on with investigations after impeachment?
I think they have to. I mean, I really do. I think there's litigation they have to do. There's going to be, we haven't even discussed the fact that the tax return Cy Vance case is going to be decided by the Supreme Court in the election year.
Right.
That is a big moment in either direction, right? If the court orders him to release it, that's huge. And you can't appeal a Supreme Court decision. I mean, there's some way I can imagine John Roberts craftily trying to come up with something that allows it to be kicked, the can to be kicked past November. We reran this back to the district court for just consideration in X, Y, and Z. Or maybe he ignores the Supreme Court, or the 5-4 Republican appointees vote to cover up the president's tax returns, which itself I think is energizing, if outrageous. So there are a whole bunch, there's that fight coming up. There's the McGahn litigation. There is the Bolton book is going to come out. That's the other thing. How could you not investigate? How can you not subpoena Bolton in the House?
Right.
After all this, how can you not subpoena Bolton in the House? Trump has essentially waived executive privilege by talking about the conversation. The guy has said he will respond to a subpoena from the Senate. You don't get to decide which house you go to.
That's right. You can't choose.
He can try, he can fight
right.
it, but of course you got to keep investigating.
All right, and then lastly, there was Tim Alberta, who is is it right for Politico? Is it? He had a tweet about a thought on Lamar Alexander, and this was last night before Alexander's announcement. And he basically said that he spent a lot of time with retired and retiring congressional Republicans since 2016. Most feel a zero sense of liberation to bash Trump on the way out. Yep. If anything, they're more cowed and cautious, fearing that being out of favor with president and his party limits their earning power. That's, I think, and he says it's not just about money. It's about they're like all his friends, and they worry about harassment of their families and loss of their standing in their community and estranged relationships.
Harassment of their family. Like, honestly, like, people are going to spit on you at the golf club.
And
like,
I think that's why, like, Cory Gardner and in particular, I think for him, it wasn't just a question of like, I think he could have made a calculation. I can win without them on some level, but I think he just realized like the cost of losing that way is far greater than the cost of losing, going down in flames with Trump. And I think they all made that calculation.
He'll go work downtown on K Street and he'll make $1 million a year.
Yep. I think
and he's young, right? So like he's thinking about he's thinking of the future. Now, yeah, but I even thought that the thing about harassment of their family, like I think the material, like the money matters a lot, but I think we tend to underestimate like how much that personal stuff matters. Like I remember having dinner with a bunch of congressional Democrats in 2010 during the Tea Party town halls, and they were just freaked out. They were shook, like almost like physically shook, that there were people screaming at them in their faces, and it was in their heads. Like it's not people, like that gets in people's heads. That those interpersonal aspects of the job and of pressure and of social sanction matter a lot to the human beings that end up being elected representatives.
Yeah, I think like it's sometimes hard, I think, for normal people to sort of like realize that dynamic. And I don't mean it because like we're, I think there's like a sensitivity that exists there, or that they're living in such a bubble that the idea of criticism that comes directly to their face is so inconsistent with their experience, their life experience at this point, that it's hard to, like Tom Steyer, like how many times do you think Tom Steyer in the past 10 years that people have come up to him and said like, you're a jerk and you're wrong.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Like nobody ever says that to a billionaire.
No,
because
no,
they're just
never.
like, I have an outside chance of like him dropping $500,000 on me just for the heck of it. And
exactly.
And I'm just
Michael Bloomberg basically ran New York for 12 years by buying off anyone that would say anything mean about him.
Yep. And I remember that moment where those wealthy people at during the Zuccotti Park takeover called what's his face, the business writer on CNBC. I can't. Yeah, Sorkin, and said, "Would you go down there and check it out and see if I'm in danger, like personal danger?" And he went down there to see and had to tell them all, assure them all that you're going to be safe. Nobody's coming for you. No one's coming with pitchforks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's Chris Hayes. Thanks so much for taking the time, man. I know that things are a little bit hectic over there.
Yeah, great to talk, man.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
All right,
bye. Chris Hayes, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have time to mess around today at all. Look at that. There was no sentimentality. It was just bye. See you later. Yeah, all business. Speaking of which, we got to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be talking to David Roth. We got to do this quick, man. All right. Quick break. Be right back. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome to the program. I'm not sure what his position is, writer at the unnamed temporary sportsblog.com. David Roth, welcome back to the program.
When you hear it out loud, you can tell that the name is perfect. You know, there was some debate internally as to whether it was the right thing, but it's so concise. It sings. It
really is. It's impressive. I think people are going to have, like, you know, it's the double N's, I think, that are going to really tie people up.
Yeah, that's just basic best practices for SEO stuff. The more chances you give people to misspell something, the better you're doing.
If there's any entrepreneurs out there who want to get named temporary sports blog, I think you might do pretty well if you put some advertising up there.
Yeah, or if you have a Unimed, just something as simple as that. Just give yourself a chance, you know, and get those clicks.
Exactly. So wait, what is this? What's going on this weekend? Is there something else? Is some other big sports event happening?
Yeah, it's a pretty full slate NHL wise this weekend, and we sorry. It's a great sport. NHL's terrific. We all love it. This was an opportunity to do like our dumb blogs for 3 days that a benevolent sponsor gave us. So yeah, some of what we do is going to be related to the big football game.
All right, wait, back up, because I don't think everybody fully understands. You were a writer at a very prominent sports website, correct?
Yeah, yes. So I was at Deadspin, and I left along with everybody else from Deadspin under unpleasant circumstances to do with management. And we've all been freelancing, and some people have taken new jobs. But the experience of having been at Deadspin, and in my case for only like 2 years, but I mean, there were people that had been there for, 10. Our brains are warped sufficiently that we were still in a Slack channel with each other talking about all those stupid blogs that we wanted to do, like, the entire time. And it wasn't, for as much of the issue that we had with management had to do with them, being mad that we would sometimes write about things other than sports. But most of what we missed were dumb sports-related things. Mike Francesa, like legendary New York sports radio blowhard, like straight up farted on the air like 3 days after we all left. And I couldn't blog about that. That's not a story you can like pitch to Slate,
right?
So it's the sort of thing where I had no outlet for this story that was, I've waited my whole life for a story like that. And, so this is finally our chance to get to tell those important stories to people for 48 more hours. And
Deadspin, basically in a day, everybody walked away from it. And it's just sort of like floating in suspended animation in a way.
Yeah. It's kind of spooky. It's like there was a period of time, I guess, in the late 90s, where they were making a lot of movies with like sort of haunted cruise ships on them. Like one had Gabriel Byrne and one had Treat Williams. And it's kind of it's a ghost ship. I don't know how haunted it actually is, but it's just a couple of weird newsy blogs that they did after everybody left, and then they just kind of bailed. So they haven't had a new post since like early November.
Yeah, it's
like
weird.
The Chiefs have lost a game more recently than Deadspin has had a post up.
Right. There you go. And
the Chiefs lost their last game on November 10th or something like that.
Wow. All right. Yeah. So the Chiefs are playing the Niners, and I don't follow football anymore since the Patriots fell apart. And then I should say I did. I was in Vegas in January of last year, I guess of January of last year, and I made a bet on the Pats for $200, and then my friend John Benjamin insisted I bet on the Ravens, which I did not want to do. He wanted it, but it was 18-1, and so I did like $50, and then I said I got to match it because if he wins that, I'm going to be really pissed. And
that must have looked really good for most of the year.
The Ravens looked really good until like I don't know, halfway through that game, and all of a sudden, just that was the last time I thought about football, frankly.
No, this is one of the few things. Obviously, it sucks to not have a job. I have so loved watching exactly as much football as I want to watch and no more. It's been very liberating. I kind of recommend it to everybody.
So give us a preview of this game. I mean, is that that's basically what's happening at the Unnamed Temporary Sports blog is everybody's just writing about, well, theoretically, although somebody's, I guess now I'm looking at the post. The one is literally about hockey.
We've had more hockey related blogs than we've had Super Bowl related blogs so far. That's something to work on. It's an iterative process, and there's no way of knowing just what the audience wants until we give them these blogs. Maybe people got really into hockey since we last posted, so that was the thought there. I have no idea what people are sort of just doing the things that they've wanted to do. I think that Lauren has been wanting to write about the NHL for a really long time. Those are extremely difficult pitches to sell. So now that we've got the space to do it, it's some people do want to read about it. It's just hard to do if it's not your blog. I think in terms of the game, it's weird. Drew wrote about it a little bit this morning. That was our first post. It was Drew McGarry did the Jamboree thing he used to do at Deadspin. And there's some good football analysis in there under the, reader letters about best practices for when your dog goes out to poop or whatever. And the game itself is really good, which is kind of or at least it seems like a very intriguing matchup of teams, which is kind of a nice break. Even if you like the Patriots, which, you seem like a nice fellow and that's your business. But it is these are both very interesting teams to watch. And I felt like last year it just was the absolute nadir of miserable football Super Bowl experience that I've had since going back to when, the 49ers would just beat the Broncos by 35 points every year when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. And I think that one way or another, this is going to be a fun game because of the fact that it's this incredibly good defense and this incredibly good offense. And even if they sort of stymie each other, I imagine that just watching that much talent on the field counterpunching. If you like football, I imagine that will be fun.
All right. Well, good. I may actually watch this game, even though it is with two subpar teams relative to the Patriots dynasty.
Yeah. Well, they just don't have that culture. They don't do it.
Wait a second. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I don't know if you've seen the latest reports on so-called Deflategate. It seems like the NFL has sort of backed off this a little bit.
Oh, you're breaking up. I gotta go. This line is getting. I haven't seen that. I do know that was transparently stupid. I mean, I think that's one of the all-time NFL stories, just because it's a bunch of just dumb guys talking about the ideal gas law that learned about it, 45 seconds earlier. There's a lot of ways in which the NFL can feel like this sort of satirical version of the United States at whatever moment in time it is, but definitely Roger Goodell discussing, what happens to footballs in cold air when he seems like the sort of guy that would not be able to read the ingredients of a box of Cheerios out loud coherently. It was gratifying, but it was also, extremely stupid even by NFL standards.
All right. Well, I thank you for that, and I appreciate that. You're a professional sports writer. I think
so I must be right.
Well, and that must carry a lot of weight. So I hope people around this office understand what's going on. I want to hear anything more about Deflategate, particularly when we're talking about the Hall of Fame. Do you think Brady? I mean, since I've got you on the line, do you think Brady's going to retire? Do you think he's going to go somewhere else, or what?
I think that he will not retire, and I think he will stay, just because it's very difficult for me to imagine it. We have this conversation, again, me and my freaking idiot coworkers who have nothing else to do, former coworkers, about where the funniest destinations for him would be if he decided to do the Joe Namath with the Rams thing, and play sort of 2 years that feel like you dreamt them on a team that isn't going anywhere. And the funniest is if he goes and plays for the Lions, to my mind, that it's a triumphant return to Michigan. He's working with Matt Patricia, who's kind of the latest knob of gnarled and inedible fruit to fall off the Bill Belichick coaching tree. And if he were to go to the Lions and go like 8-8 and then 6-10 and then retire, I think that in some ways that would be a fitting end. But it's also very difficult for me to imagine him leaving the Patriots. Like, as much as this year was kind of like, they seemed, especially in the second half, to be like winding down and kind of on the downside of this sort of dynasty. I don't think that Brady himself is like cooked.
Right.
And I know this as somebody who watched Eli Manning for the last 4 or 5 years, where the Giants would, they find one good throw in a game and be like, you see that? You can't do that if you shouldn't be an NFL quarterback anymore, right? And then, people would be like, well, he threw 31 other passes in the game, and like most of them were straight up in the air for some reason. Like, why would you do this? And with Brady, I think that like they have done a good job, just because they're very well coached, like not asking him to do things that he can't do. I just think that this is like, it felt like the most Belichick-y team in the sense that he's always felt like he's kind of like pushing to see like how many kind of just random white guys from Navy he can have in the lineup at one time and still win games. And this is like, they just didn't really have very many, they didn't have very many talented receivers. Yeah. There's just a lack of talent's never really been a problem there, but it just didn't seem like they quite had it. But he's a very good exec, like he's a very good coach. And I don't see any reason why, if they, didn't retool, that they could go on being annoying with Brady for another 2 or 3 years.
Yes. All right. That's exactly what I want to hear. I agree.
Or
with that
inspiring.
totally.
Yeah.
I feel like
annoying versus inspiring is a thin line, really.
A team like, Brady could have done more with the less that he had this year, maybe 5 years ago, or, but I think he can't, there's not as much room for margin of error. And they were definitely lacking, particularly on the offensive side. But
it's really nice to be in that division, though, because they're still going to get to play the Dolphins and the Jets twice each next year. Like, they can make the playoffs even if Brady does decline. It's just like, they don't feel as scary or as inevitable, I guess, as they did before.
Yes, and that's a sad place to return to. I mean, I
really depends on your perspective, but yeah.
Well, I could tell you, I grew up with I lived through the Victor Kayem, Lisa Olson years. I started watching when Plunkett was still the quarterback, so I felt like I earned it. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, honestly. To me, the thing with them was not the inevitability of any, sports powerhouse. Like, eventually it gets sort of old. I think that I appreciated them when they had that kind of there's the year that, I don't want to bring up that they lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl, but the undefeated season. Right. But I couldn't really enjoy it because they were so good and so much better than every other team they played. But I think in retrospect, those were pretty cool teams to watch. I've not seen teams that good in my life. It's just always been a struggle for me, going back to when I watched Michael Jordan as a kid. That anybody that's too good, I
resent.
I don't know. I take it personally. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's healthy.
Is it? I don't know. It hasn't ever made me happy, but it's nice to hear that it's healthy.
No, I was being facetious.
From a Patriots fan. Oh, good. Oh, okay. All right. Cool. That makes more sense.
Yeah, that makes a lot more
sense.
Scans
a little better.
Yeah, it's not a great recipe, but I certainly understand the sentiment. All right, and so all right, so anything that we should be looking for in particular during the Super Bowl? I mean, isn't that what you want to express as you want to tell me the one dynamic that's going to make the difference for the Chiefs or the 49ers?
Well, I mean, there's the things that people sort of tend to focus on and stuff like this, at least, when you're watching it on TV, they're going to talk about the coaches a lot, which means that people are going to be waiting for Andy Reid to fuck up. And that's kind of unfair to Andy Reid, I think. I think he's done a really good job. I think he's a very good coach. It's just that if he calls a timeout in the third quarter, Twitter is going to shut down because so many people are going to be like, this shit again. Doing the vomiting emoji is going to just sort of overwhelm the entire feed. I think that the Chiefs have been, I tended to underrate them this year. I think because they had this stretch in the middle of the year after Mahomes got hurt, where they had Matt Moore as their quarterback, and they were extremely average. Matt Moore is a good NFL backup, but he's not Pat Mahomes. And I should call him Patrick Mahomes. Pat Mahomes was his dad and pitched for the Mets when I was younger. That's like the stage of being washed that I am. So I have like vivid memories of his father as a Major League Baseball player. Patrick Mahomes Jr. is a genius. And that's, I think, what the game is going to hinge on, is just the 49ers defense is everywhere. They're terrifying. They have good players at basically every position. But Mahomes is really like as creative as Brett Favre ever was. He can make every throw. He runs really well. Like, if he's able to do 75% of what he wants to do, I think the Chiefs could win the game, barring, again, some hideous Andy Reid cock-up involving timeouts and the clock.
All right. Well, there you have it, folks. And you can head over to the unnamed temporary sports blog.
That's a crucial mispronunciation. That's really going to hurt us.
Temporarysportsblog.com. We will put the link on there after double checking the spelling.
I was going to say very carefully, but thank you. I appreciate, and everybody appreciates you giving it a push.
Appreciate you coming on. All right. Thanks, man.
Thanks, man. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, folks. Moving on with our cavalcade of guests today. A lot of guys on the show today.
Bernie Day.
That's right. We're celebrating Hot Boys for Bernie Day. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to.
I just wanted to get Sam to say that.
There you go.
You guys can work with that now.
Yes, exactly. Get to work clipping that. But we've hit like all of the sort of the male archetypes today, right? We're going with the sports guy, and now we'll go to the film guy.
Oh yeah. And the politics.
And the politics nerds. Quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Matthew Film Guy, who is the movie critic now. He has been credentialed to go to Sundance. And we're going to talk to him live from Park City, Utah. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report on the phone. It is a pleasure to welcome the Majority Report film critic, the credentialed Majority Report film critic, calling live from Park City, Utah, the home of the Sundance Film Festival. Matthew Film Guy, welcome back to the program. Matthew?
Are you forgetting something?
Hello?
Are you forgetting something?
Oh, gosh! Forget it. Hold on.
Matthew the Film Guy is choosing your streams. Cassavetes on Netflix and other such themes. Maybe I'll watch one and learn a few things. Please recommend me a movie to stream. Matthew, please recommend me a movie to stream. Matthew, Film Guy.
There you go, Matthew Film Guy. So Matthew, Last I heard, you were texting me saying that you were having a little trouble with getting into any of the press screenings. How is Sundance?
Well, Sam, it was really a good time. I enjoyed myself. I think I made a lot of good connections. I handed out a lot of my business card as an editor, and I think it's going to mean big things for me. Our film went over very well. Black Bear, directed by Lawrence Michael Levine, starring Aubrey. I really can't be any more grateful for the opportunity that this film gave me to go to Sundance.
All right, well, talk
as a filmmaker.
Talk closer into your phone. I don't know. Did you get on like a headset or something? Something changed.
This is what I've been doing. Sorry.
Whatever you just did is this is much better. Okay, what do you mean it was good? Where are you right now?
Oh no, I'm at home. I spent 6 days there, and that was enough. That was good.
Are you serious?
I mean, yeah, I was credentialed for 2 weeks, but it's expensive. It's expensive to stay there, and it's really the first weekend is when the real stuff happens, and you go to the parties and you meet the people, and then you try to get into movies, and then you can't. Home, and you're a little sick when you go home, but you're happy.
Are you serious? This is the second time in a row we've had you on. We had you on last week. Why? Like you could, if you're not at Sundance, we could have done this in a month.
Well, I come back with a lot of really interesting feedback for you, and to pass on to the audience, just to let them know what it was like to be at Sundance.
Did you see the Hillary documentary?
I saw the outside of the theater.
Did you go to Sundance?
No, I went to Sundance. I have pictures. Listen, I sent you some pictures. Maybe we can go through some of those because it really shows you the story of my time at Sundance. And I did my best to represent the Majority Report. But, technically speaking, whatever is good for Matthew, the film guy, since I represent the show, is technically in the interest of the Majority Report.
Yeah, great. All right, let's look at these pictures. Is your... Okay, this is great. This makes me really feel. Hold on, wait a second. Put it back. We got to tell him it's a picture with you. Is that Mary?
Yep, this is us going to the airport. Mary's looking like a movie star, and that's us on the airplane with our two dogs, Dudley and Mabel. They came along. That was a really big part of our weekend.
Well, you brought your dogs on the airplane?
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. They fly with us everywhere. They're emotional support dogs, Sam. Get with it.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. They're amazing citizens of the sky.
All right. So there's a picture of you and Mary and your dogs. It has nothing to do with Sundance. Let's go to the next picture.
Well, no, if it's got to do with Matthew the film guy, it's got to do with Sundance, and it's got to do with the Majority Report. It's just in the public interest.
Next picture.
Oh, that's the grocery list that people gave me that we stayed at the condo together. We had to furnish 6 or 7 different people from the film stayed with us in this big condo. It was really great. But
you're buying $25 average bottle of wines. Is your average cost of your wine? That's a little bit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's a little fancy, isn't it? $25 a pop. I
think we're worth it. And I think a film that got the kind of reviews that Black Bear got, which is like 85% on Rotten Tomatoes right now, I think we deserve at least that kind of bottles of wine.
2% milk, 3 yogurts, 2 bags of spinach. What a very just odd, like a list of, all right, let's go. Caesar, ranch, whatever. Jesus, Matthew, what is, this is a picture of like beer.
Yeah, oh my God, the beer selection at the Park City Beer Outlet. It's the state liquor store. It's amazing. This is Sundance to me, is this amazing selection of beer. You wouldn't believe what they had there. Imperial stouts, pale ale. I'm not really a beer guy, but I was overwhelmed. And this is, to me, a big part of Sundance.
I think folks are getting a real sense of what happens when your film does well and you start to feel it a little bit. You start to feel your oats a little bit.
Yeah.
This is nice. Working press, Matthew Weiss, critic, The Majority Report with Sam Cedar. Of course, we've heard anything about a single effing film in 2 segments that we've done with you now.
Well, listen, film festivals, part of it is film, but part of it is festival. You know, you're partying, you're enjoying yourself.
What's the next picture? Great. There's another picture of you with the credit, and this is you in some type of like line. Is that what it is? What's going on?
Yeah, I was outside. Yeah, I was outside the one of the film festivals. Oh, that's inside the Filmmaker Center, where you get your credentials and everybody signs up for movies. And really, as soon as you get there, unless you were there like the day before. So I did my best, but I barely got into any movies. I think I saw one movie, but we'll get to that.
What?
Besides my own, I went to 2 screenings of my own movie.
You went to one other movie?
Yeah, and that was just because I knew the director who knew the actor in it. So, but that movie, and that movie wasn't that great. But listen, it's the thought that counts. It's the attempt.
Go to the next one. Are you being serious? There's a pair of socks. That's great. That's great. And
they got amazing swag at Sundance. The swag at Sundance is like really, really great.
And there's an
warm
wait
socks
list.
because it's cold.
Right. There's an internal error has occurred.
That's what happens when you try to get tickets. That's what happens on the app we try to get tickets to the Taylor Swift documentary, and it like blew up the app. We try to get tickets to some of the other films, and there's just too much demand.
What's the next picture? Great. Has a picture of you guys about to order some food in some completely generic looking restaurant.
That really is the highest. I mean, film critics need food. You know, actors, those are some of the actors and other crew members in the film. And we hung out a lot at this restaurant because it just had seats.
Next one. Oh, there's a picture of Black Bear, like the Facebook, I guess, right? Is that what it is?
Is it?
I don't know.
Facebook?
And now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's what they give. That's what they give out to all the critics and stuff before the movie. And this is where it starts to get really exciting because there we are. There's Aubrey Plaza down at the end of the row there. We're waiting for the premiere.
Who's Aubrey
Plaza?
Plaza?
Exciting.
Who is Aubrey Plaza?
Aubrey Plaza, she is the star of screen and television who started in Black Bear. She is the one that you and Jamie always have to have the conversation about how you didn't see Parks and Rec about. That's her.
All right. Fair enough. And so she's an actress. And is that the whole... Who's that up on stage? There's Matthew up on stage.
Okay. Yep. So that's at the end of the premiere. We did a little Q&A, and that's everybody. That's right to left. That's Sarah Gadden, Chris Abbott, Aubrey Plaza, Lawrence Levine, the director, Rob Leitzel, the DP, and your own humble Matthew Film Guy, the editor.
Wow. There you go. And there's
and
another,
if you notice, I have
the same
two.
picture.
If you notice, I have two. Nobody else has theirs on because they're not so gauche, but I have two credentials on, which is better than one.
Right. Yeah. One of them was the there's a picture of you looking concerned. Nice. Okay. And there's a picture of the audience. There's a picture of you at the restaurant again. That's great.
That restaurant. Did I mention how great that restaurant was?
You did. And here's one of a waiting room, apparently.
No, that's our condo. That's where everybody hung out, and we were all enjoying each other's company. That's a lot of the cast and crew that stayed with us. They're all very talented actors. And you can see Dudley, my dog, down at the bottom there.
Mm-hmm.
There we are at the condo enjoying ourselves. Yeah,
looks like fun.
This is a picture of Sundance. When you want to know what is Sundance like, it's this.
Great.
Yes.
Jacuzzi. We had a jacuzzi. Did I mention that?
Yeah. Who's that in the jacuzzi? Was that Mary?
That's Mary. That's Mary. There she is.
A big glass of wine. And
having a nice glass of wine. Oh, yeah, wine in the jacuzzi.
Yep. This is great. And there's people getting picked up in the buses and then back at the airport.
Okay, now those buses, that is the Hillary Clinton movie.
Oh, great.
That is the outside of the Hillary Clinton movie. That is as close as I got. And there's me standing in the press line moments before I am told that the majority report cannot be let in.
Great. And there you are with your badge, and there's a picture of a car. Great. And there's okay, keep going. Nice. That's nice. Here you go. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's good, right?
Great.
That's the street. So after you get out of the Oh, that's a good message I got.
Yeah. Keep going. Great. That's it. All right. Terrific. Oh, Matthew, this was so worth it.
Wait, we're not done.
Yeah, no, we're done.
Oh, wow, I recognize that.
Who's that guy?
That guy, my cousin.
I don't know where you're at.
My cousin played for this team. This is, I forget what the team is. But
Matt recognizes
the Norfolk
the
Tides.
hat.
It's a Norfolk Tides hat.
Norfolk Tides. That's exciting. That's
Okay,
super exciting.
that's Kevin. He was in our movie.
Whatever. All right. Terrific.
But you didn't even get to when I met the guy from Uncut Gems. Did you see Uncut Gems?
Yeah, I did. What guy? Adam Sandler?
The bad guy. No, the other guy.
Oh, all right. Well, how many pictures? I mean, like, honestly. Yeah, there he is. All right, there's that guy. Okay, good. Yeah, that's exciting.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah,
all right.
that was.
Well,
that was
Matthew,
huge.
film guy, this has been really edifying. You saw one movie. You can't tell us anything that happened at Sundance. I was very excited at the prospect of like getting you a film critic badge, and all we did is got like
I was too.
Like photos of like really nothing that had to do with anything except for you going on vacation and partying.
I mean, again, Sam, my career as an editor and a filmmaker only benefits the Majority Report. So if I do something in my own interest, it is ipso facto helpful to the Majority Report. Get it?
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, Matthew, film guy, congratulations. Where can we see Black Bear?
Well, Black Bear right now, it's got, if you go to the end of the pictures, you can see all the great reviews that it's getting. You can check out the reviews right now. But right now, it's still on the festival circuit until people decide to fork up some money to pay for it and distribute it. We're fielding offers right now. I can't really talk about that. But it is
That's
going
the only
to
interesting
be
thing that you
somewhere.
have to report, and you can't talk about it.
Well, that would be premature for me because there's nothing to announce yet. But it gets a lot of buzz from the festivals. And, all those great reviews, I'm sure anytime now will result in a distributor.
All right. Well, I hope that's the case.
Let me wait. I have to tell you one other thing, Sam. I handled the Q&A at the Salt Lake City screening. Some of the screenings go to Salt Lake City from Park City. And it was late at night, and it's not really something that other filmmakers and actors want to go to. But they let Matthew, the editor, go. And before I sit down in the theater, one of the pictures is if you scroll through, you'll see the Q&A there.
We won't.
Someone in the audience walks up to me and goes, "Are you Matthew Film Guy?" And apparently they had heard my talking about the film earlier that day on the Majority Report. That was last Friday. And they came out to see the film. The guy's name is Kyle, and he asked a very nice question. And I handled the Q&A, and we had a chat. So I want you to reach extends to the films that show at Sundance, for sure.
That's very exciting, and I'm glad that it went well. I hope the movie gets purchased, and that this will lead to other opportunities for you to go to film festivals and report on it for us, because this has been so successful.
Did I tell you that I got a free Heineken beer for life card at one of the parties?
What?
Oh, yeah.
How does
It's in
that
those
work?
pictures that you skipped over.
How does that work? So
It's
do you
a
go
promotion.
Do you go into a
Yeah.
bar and you get a free Heineken beer wherever you are?
No, I have to give them like a few days to a week heads up. And if I'm having a party or a function, I call this number that's on this golden card. And they basically just furnish you with any of the Heineken brands, Red Stripe, Amstel Light.
Wow, for free?
Next time the Majority Report's having a function, I think it's all going to pay off, this little press pass that you
We're
gave
going to
me.
use that. We're going to use that for sure. That's the best thing. You should have
All
led
right,
with
so
that.
you almost
dude.
blew it. You almost blew it, but it's still going to pay off for you.
All right.
There you go.
We got it all on tape. Matthew, film guy, always a pleasure. We'll talk to you soon, buddy. Congrats.
Thanks for having me, Sam.
All right, Black
Thank
Bear,
you.
folks.
Bye-bye.
Black Bear, check it out. All right, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will play some clips of Donald Trump in Iowa last night. We'll talk a little bit more about impeachment. A couple of other stories that are just sort of stunning about Trump's border wall. And this opioid story. I know that Michael may have talked about it briefly yesterday, but I can't get over this. Where this, essentially the software maker doing medical records, basically got a product placement fee from, it's suspected, Purdue Pharma to push opioids on doctors. I mean, it's nuts.
New opportunities from Silicon Valley.
It is. It seems to be basically the functional equivalent of, getting paid advertising placement in a Google search without it saying that it's an ad, and with it popping up. It's nuts. We'll talk about that in a bit. All right, just a reminder, folks, you can support the show by becoming a member. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget the AM Quickie is available at amquickie.com. Check out our friend Nomiki's new show, The Nomiki Show. We'll put a link to that in our podcast description, in our YouTube description. Nomiki will join us for our coverage Monday night of the Iowa caucus results. Next week, we're going to be doing Iowa caucus live. We're going to do a show on Monday. I'm not sure what's going to happen on Tuesday during the day, but certainly at night we'll be doing the State of the Union, and then we'll be probably doing a show on Wednesday, and then Friday night we're going to do live coverage of the debate in New Hampshire, which should be interesting based upon the results of Iowa, which we don't know yet, but we'll see. It's a crazy week or two coming up, folks. So hang with us. In the meantime, check out TMBS. Where have they released? Has Michael released the second part of the Lula interview yet?
I believe it went up last night.
Okay, so you check out patreon.com/TMBS or Michael Brooks Show on YouTube to check out that Lula thing.
Live tonight as well.
Oh,
TMBS live.
Oh, live
on
tonight.
Friday night.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it. So you can check out the YouTube channel for that. And you can check out the Intifada at patreon.com. The Intifada. It has been quarantined, but you are safe to listen to it. You will not get the flu. And Literary Hangover, Matt?
Yeah, I just recorded another poem, Ebenezer Cook's Bacon's Rebellion poem from 1731. So that's up for patrons. I'm going to put it out for everybody the next 24 hours. So and then that's going to be the next episode. So look forward to that.
All right, quick break, fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost has what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them. Almost has what? Almost has what?
hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
The alpha males are back. And the Africans are black Africans. The alpha males are back. And the Africans are black
part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em, fuck 'em, fuck things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
All right, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 210 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. This is John from San Antonio.
John from San Antonio, getting the pole position today. Good for you. How are you doing? Are you ready for Monday night? We'll be in touch. I'll send you send me an email just so that I have it at majorityreporters@gmail.com, and I will we will work out timing for Monday night.
Okay, sounds great. Super psyched. So here's a quote from Bernie. The truth is we can win this election if we have the largest voter turnout in the history of this country. On caucus night, I'm modifying this part of the quote. When you're watching the Majority Report and if the moderator tells you there's a large voter turnout, we win. The Des Moines Register put out an article on January 7th called What's the Expected Turnout on Caucus Night? Iowa Democrats are using the H word, huge. Here's some excerpts from the article. Turnout will probably rival the 2008 record, which they said was nearly 240,000. The actual estimation was around 236. Which included an unprecedented number of first-time caucus goers. Party officials and volunteers are preparing for a massive turnout. It's the search for larger venues. The party has landed private venues that the party has spent around $20,000 on venues alone in Polk County, the home of Des Moines. We're dealing with caucus sites that will have 1,200 people in them, according to Judy Downs, who's the Polk County Democratic Executive Director. Downs says there are some sites that will have an increase of 300% from 2016. One of the things in Polk County is that when you canvass, you're not necessarily going to be able to caucus at the precinct. You may have to drive a few miles to caucus because that elementary school that you're usually caucus at isn't going to be able to hold the population that needs the caucus. So the turnout for the 2016 Democratic caucus was 1,071,500, and according to Chuck Rocha, one of Bernie's senior advisors, Bernie got 85,000 votes in 2016 and expects to get that total or higher. The turnout ratio, according to the voter-eligible population of Iowa voters from both Democrats and Republicans, is 15.7%, or about 7.5% for Democrats. So the 11% turnout ratio that I talked about in my last call among voters who are 18 to 29% is expected to triple, according to a Suffolk poll released last Friday.
That's nuts.
So if you can, yeah, I mean, hopefully it's going to happen, you know. So if you compare that to like New Hampshire, you know, they had I think 52%, you know, vote in their primary, which was the highest in the entire country. So I mean, it just shows you, since, you know, even though they expect a record turnout, you can really you know, turn this election just by it's still relatively low turnout compared to regular primaries. So you can turn everything just by turnout. So, you know.
And we should say, if Sanders gets the same amount that he did in 2016, Clinton just beat him by, I know it was like, 2 delegates, I think, right? And so no one else has the relative strength, theoretically. Right? I mean, there'll be the viability is such, like it only goes to the second round in terms of viability, right? Like, I mean, if you maintain viability through the first round and the second round, it's conceivable you could have 3 or 4 people, right, pulling delegates out of there.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing. In the last 4 days, I think that Bernie has, you know, 50% of the electorate, which is the highest in the entire country. So I mean, it just shows you, since, you know, even though they expect a record turnout, you can really Buttigieg has moved up 1 point. Warren has moved up above that viability level. I mean, I think when I called it on Monday, she was at 14. Now she's up to 16. So, I mean, it really does, the Iowa caucus really does promote parity compared to most primaries where, like in New Hampshire, the last poll that came out, everybody besides Bernie was under 15%. So, I mean, I wrote a tweet saying that he could get 100% of the delegates. And, I mean, I don't think that's possible when you look at an average of polls. But, I mean, that's just according to that one last poll. But so anyway, so I'm concerned that certain venues will not be able to hold all caucus goers because they will reach capacity. So Bernie voters really need to show up extra early so they can be let in before they reach capacity. I've already seen one Iowa caucus goer say on Twitter that her caucus holds 400 and 276 have already RSVPs. So Bernie leads in Iowa hasn't changed dramatically from the last time I called, despite 5 new polls that came out. So I'm looking at the polls that poll the top 4 candidates, which I feel is more accurate because the second vote, which is the one that really determines the delegates. So Bernie's at 25, Biden's at 22. Buttigieg is up 1 point from the last time I called. He's at 18, and Warren's up, like I said earlier, at 16. So Tuesday and Wednesday, you were talking about how people don't vote on ideology, and you even dismissed analysts who talk about elections in terms of ideological voting. And I would admit that there are many voters who have idiosyncratic views, and many political canvassers will confirm this. So what we're talking about is a certain percentage who vote on issues and those who don't. Right. So so you agree with that, okay?
Of course.
So I would say in broad terms that people, when you say that people don't vote on ideological views, you're discounting an increasing amount of knowledgeable voters in the electorate, according to many political science studies. I've argued that exit polls show that during the 2016 Democratic caucus and primaries, if you ask voters who consider themselves extremely liberal, Bernie Sanders received the highest amount of votes in every state except for those who were uncompetitive. And the same thing applied to Clinton, winning moderate and conservative voters in every state except those uncompetitive states. So the same applies to this year's election. Bernie wins extremely liberal voters, and Biden wins moderate and conservatives. Even people like pollster Ann Seltzer, who usually don't agree in voting by ideology or lanes, can't deny this is happening in this year's elections. Though I would disagree that I think this is a long-term pattern. I would recommend that you and your audience listen to the podcast called The American Public's Growing Ideological Sophistication, which is a conversation between political science professors Martin Wattenberg of Cal Irvine and Austin Kozlowski from the University of Chicago.
Second. John, you're telling people to listen to a different... Why don't you just say, why not have them on as guests? Don't tell people to go listen to a different show. Are you calling into other shows?
I'm sorry?
Are you calling into other shows?
Well, you haven't done the fake jealousy thing for a while, but okay. No, I'm not.
All right, good. Well, let me ask you this: how many people self-identify as extremely liberal in the Democratic primary?
Of extremely liberal, self-identify. I don't know offhand. Let me see. I can look it up. 2016. I mean, they're not going to have a national total. I can look in. Well,
my point is that saying that Bernie Sanders wins amongst the extremely liberal. Listen, I'm not discounting that. You and I obviously vote on ideological terms. Everyone I talk to who calls into the show is voting on ideological terms on some level, right? In terms of policy, et cetera, et cetera. So I obviously believe that a certain percentage does. But the ones who are up for grabs at this point, I don't think are. And And I think, I mean, there may be other cues that suggest that, but saying that Bernie Sanders wins the most liberal or the most left, however they phrase that, I think, yeah, of course he does. That doesn't mean, that's not the same as saying most voters vote on ideology. It just means the ones that do know who they're voting for. But I'm just suggesting that the majority of people in these elections don't.
Right, but exit polls reflect, a good sample, just like regular polls, of voters. I mean, these aren't
right. Well, that's what I'm asking you.
Voters.
What percentage? It's one thing to say that Bernie wins the extremely liberal voters, right? He gets 70% and Biden gets 30%, let's say. But if there's, out of a pool of 100 and there's only 10 who identify that way, it still doesn't address my theory.
28% identified that way in Iowa
okay.
in
So a quarter of the
2016.
voters you're suggesting who identify as extremely liberal, Bernie won more of those. Well, yeah, okay.
Right, by 19 points. 40% identify as somewhat liberal. Clinton won that by 6, and 28% is by moderate, and she won that by 23%. And that pattern happens all across in practically every state. So, I mean, that's my point.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate it. We will talk about Monday. Thank you. Now you have time to go call your other show, John.
I didn't. I don't call it the other show.
Yeah. All right. Talk to you later. Thanks for the call.
All right. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Very, very particular. John's getting very, very, very nitpicky with me sometimes. Let's just play one more clip of the impeachment hearing, because now this is less relevant based upon Lamar Alexander's thing. Although, like I say, his statement I thought was very convoluted. He is admitting to the facts, but his interpretation of the facts seems to be completely off the wall. He's admitting that the president asked for the investigations, that it was a quid pro quo, but he's also sort of saying like that is tantamount to interfering with an investigation, but it's not. There was no investigation. He was trying to get them to initiate an investigation for no reason other than for his personal benefit. That's what it was. Not that he was interfering in an investigation. And here is evidence that he was not actually interfering with an investigation, and that his motivation was simply to win an election rather than to get to the bottom of corruption, because even his own defense attorneys don't have an answer to this question.
Question is to counsel for the president. Witnesses testified before the House that President Trump consistently expressed the view that Ukraine was a corrupt country. Before Vice President Biden formally entered the 2020 presidential race in April 2019, did President Trump ever mention Joe or Hunter Biden in connection with corruption in Ukraine to former Ukrainian President Poroshenko or other Ukrainian officials, President Trump's cabinet members or top aides or others? If so, what did the president say to whom and when?
Pause it. So understand what the question is here. It's saying, if this was a genuine concern, even if it was a concern about the Bidens, right? That he had, because it would have nothing to do with the fact that Joe Biden's running for president. He's looking for corruption. Surely there must be someone in the government who he said this to. And of course they would come and talk about it. Of course they would. You even if you're a defense attorney, you go and interview everybody like, hey, does anybody remember when the president said this? Oh yeah, me. Okay, let me just write that down. Will you sign a deposition? Yes, I will. Okay, great. We have this in our file because surely somebody's going to ask us about this. So very easy for us to find this because it was a hot topic around the White House.
Mr. Chief Justice, Senators, thank you for that question. Of course, I think it's important at the outset to frame the answer by bearing in mind I'm limited to what's in the record, and what's in the record is determined by what the House of Representatives sought. It was their proceeding. They were the ones who ran it. They were the ones who called the witnesses. So part of the question refers to conversations between President Trump and other cabinet members and others like that. There's not something in the record on that. It wasn't thoroughly pursued in the record. So I can't point to something in the record that shows President Trump at an earlier time mentioning specifically something related to Joe or Hunter Biden.
Now, to the extent that there was no one who would have heard that, now, we heard from all the ambassadors to Ukraine. Every one of them that was an ambassador at any point during the Trump administration. We heard from NSC people at any point. They were all asked the question. To the extent that there was any other cabinet officials who Donald Trump would have mentioned this to, they were requested, but the White House wouldn't let them testify, which is super weird because they would have been able to come in and clear this all up for everybody. So too long, didn't read. The answer is no. We have no evidence at all that he said anything like that. All right. Lastly, let's do this one question, which I appreciate. This one's from Elizabeth Warren. And this is one of those things that I think like, well, this is one of the, I'm not saying it's like a death punch, not like a Bruce Lee type of like kidney punch where the guy dies like 3 weeks later or something of kidney failure. But it is one that I think that like could, constrict some blood arteries, maybe some down the road that somebody has a stroke.
Thank you, counsel.
Mr. Chief Justice.
Senator from Massachusetts.
Mr. Chief Justice, I send a question to the desk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question from.
Here we go.
The question from Senator Warren is for the House managers. At a time when large majorities of Americans have lost faith in government, does the fact that the Chief Justice is presiding over an impeachment trial in which Republican senators have thus far refused to allow witnesses or evidence contribute to the loss of legitimacy of the Chief Justice, the Supreme Court, and the Constitution?
Ooh. That's got to hurt, because that's the question that John Roberts has been asking himself. And
he's got a good look on his face there.
Yes. What's interesting is that there was this whole thing where Rand Paul had in his question, and it announced that he was going to do this, that I put in my question the name of the whistleblower because they really want to punish this whistleblower. They want to out him, which of course makes absolutely no sense whatsoever because Lamar Alexander has already said, like, I believe all what happened there. But that's irrelevant. So if that's the case, and that's the argument by the defense attorneys, who cares who the whistleblower was? It doesn't matter. And even if it did matter in that respect, the whistleblower was only basically pointing to other people who had information, all of whom testified. Maybe John Bolton was one of those people, though. He did not testify. But some of them did. And so John Roberts read Rand Paul's question to himself first and said, I'm not going to, this question's out of order. He did not do that in that instance. And so you see him sort of digesting that as he goes. And once he heads down that path, he realizes he has to finish the question. That was rather satisfying. But it's also, I think, something, watching Claire McCaskill on the MSNBC coverage of this was illuminating and terrifying because the pettiness and the personalness of both the way that she acted towards the senators that would come on, but also just sort of their reasoning in there. It was like, they're probably tired, so they're probably going to this is the future of the country.
They probably need a snack.
Honestly,
she was literally talking about it.
And you start to realize, like, holy shit, I can't believe these people are in control. Like, I can't believe how much control is invested in these people. You can't have a full hearing because we just elected people who are just, they're too old now and they can't do it. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. Chuck seems tired. Oh, okay. Well, then I'm going to cut him some slack. Maybe he should have taken a nap. It really is amazing to me. Here's Donald Trump last night in Des Moines, Iowa. He is, this is fascinating because they're talking to farmers in the same way, or talking about farmers in the same way that they talk about black people or Latinos. It's all ostensibly talking to and about them, but really just talking to the people not in that group to make them feel better about the way that group is being treated. This is the dynamic that's happening here. Listen to this. Donald Trump in Iowa. You would think he's talking to some farmers there, but I have a feeling not.
And if we don't win, your farms are going to hell, I can tell you right now. Sell. They'll be saying, sell. No, we love the farmers and we love the ranch.
We love the ranchers. Yeah. Farm bankruptcies are up by 20%. They're at an all-time high since 8 or 9 years ago. Does anybody remember what happened 8 or 9 years ago? We had a massive financial crisis. And not only that, they are up despite the fact that there has been a slush fund for farmers of $28 billion in the past 2 years. $20 billion was paid out by the end of 2019. $20 billion has been paid out. And despite that fact, the family farmers, filed 20% more bankruptcies this year, despite the fact they got a $20 billion bailout.
And farmers know that when they hear him say things like that.
You would imagine, and that's why I'm convinced that a lot of these people just aren't farmers, that it's really just more like, oh, we feel good about our farmers. It's the same way with everything that they say about any out group is really just to make them feel better about the way they're treating this group. Pretty stunning.
There's one more from Iowa if we want it on cows.
Yeah, let's hear this.
Wonderful cows. I love cows. They want to kill our cows. You know why, right? You know why? Don't say it. They want to kill our cows. That means you're next. And they want to wipe out totally Iowa ethanol. They want to wipe it out.
They want to wipe it out because of the... incidentally, you know what happens to the cows? I mean, they're killed.
Wait, what?
They want to kill our cows. Yeah, that's what happens to a lot of them.
I do like the new logic of the Green New Deal is the new death panels.
Yeah.
Because that's what that kind of sounded like to me.
Yes. First they come for the cows, then they kill all of us.
It's the burger panels.
Yep.
They want to tell you what burgers you can eat.
That is going to be the line. And I just don't know that that's going to work. Bernie's going to come for your cows. And Bernie's going to go like, I've been spending the past 30 years living basically amongst cows in Vermont. Don't tell me about farmers. That's the trouble I think that Trump would have with Sanders is really on some level, if we're dealing with a rural urban divide in this country, getting a rural candidate may be helpful. Meanwhile, I mentioned earlier that the Trump administration is now allowing for block granting of Medicaid. And if you go back 1 year from now, almost, it was January 28th, 2019, we did an interview with, who was it with, Brendan?
Jamila Meichner.
Jamila Meichner. Mishner, sorry. You can check out what it means to block grant Medicaid. We did an interview about that. But basically what happens is this. The Trump administration is giving a waiver to states to allow them to block grant it. Now, what happens is when it is block granted, you get a little bit less, I think it is. But by receiving a fixed federal payment, in other words, one that does not rise as you have more people who qualify for it, you have the ability to shed all of the restrictions in terms of who you have to serve with Medicaid from the federal government. Does that make sense? If I articulated that properly? So what ends up happening in states that are controlled by Republicans is they start putting all sorts of restrictions on who can get Medicaid as a way of saving that block granted money, because they no longer have to abide by federal regulations, which say, no, you need to make it available to people earning about this amount of money or vice versa, et cetera, et cetera. And they start to kick people off the Medicaid rolls. And then they apply that money to other places so that they can maybe provide tax cuts. That's basically what happens. So you get more people who have less insurance. And it's obviously going horribly underreported because of all the other stuff that's going on. But Mike Pence, who is in Iowa, had the grave misfortune for him to run into a doctor from Michigan, I believe, who must be there. I don't know what he's doing there, but he was in his what do you call it? Like those doctor scrubs. I think he's wearing a brown scrub on the top of his shirt. But here he is. Mike Pence comes in shaking hands with everybody and does not expect that he's going to have to answer any questions of substance.
Hey, gentlemen. Hey.
Hey, how you doing?
Dr. Rob Davidson. How you doing?
Hey, Rob. Good to meet you. Hi there. I'm Joel.
Joel? So I'm
Nice to meet you, Mr. Vice
I'm
President.
an emergency doctor. I'm worried about plans they talked about last week of maybe cutting Medicare and then the rollout today of cutting Medicaid. I work in one of the poorest counties in Michigan, and my patients depend on expanded Medicaid. So how is that going to affect my patients?
I hadn't heard about cutting some Medicaid.
Cutting Medicaid, yeah. The head of CMS announced the plan to let states file for waivers so they could get block grants. So that would essentially cut the amount of money going to the states. So that would cut federal Medicaid funding. Is that a good idea?
Actually, when I was governor of Indiana, we got a waiver from the Obama administration that actually allowed us to expand Medicaid coverage in the states.
Right, but now they're talking about scaling back the Medicaid expansion that we got with the Affordable Care Act, and that 680,000 Michiganders, 600,000 in Iowa. A lot of people got health care.
We expanded coverage in Indiana.
Right, but I'm just talking about the president and your administration right now, what they're doing. Right now, they're cutting Medicaid.
Those are waivers for states that didn't take expansion.
No, it's for people who took expansion money too. I mean, your administration just announced this. They rolled it out today, and it's going to affect millions of people across the country cutting Medicaid. I mean, is that a good idea or is that a bad idea?
I think you're oversimplifying it.
Well, I think it comes down to that for the people I take care of all the time. I mean, people I see in the emergency department that can't get primary care doctors, once they got Medicaid, they could get primary care doctors. They stay out of the ER. They actually work more. They actually contributed to our community more. Now, if a couple of people sorry you don't get your health care, I mean, that's going to be a real negative in their lives.
Yeah. Mike Pence was not exactly prepared for that question. But it's fascinating to watch because we don't see these type of exchanges. I want everybody just to take for a moment and realize and go back and watch it if you're watching on YouTube. Just contemplate the idea that the vice president is asked questions of that depth that never, ever, ever, ever happens. And that ER doctor knew exactly what he was talking about. And Pence you just watch the different ways in which he tries to divert and to dodge this question.
Like he's trying to find like some wreckage of talking points to take up.
And at first he says, you're contemplating cutting Medicare and you have just effectively cut Medicaid. And so the first thing Pence does is goes, I don't know about cutting Medicare. He goes, well, the Medicaid thing happened yesterday or today where you're going to allow block granting, and that means less funding and then funds that can be diverted. He's like, well, we got a waiver during the Obamacare and we expanded coverage. And the waiver he was talking about was a deal that they made with the federal government. We will expand coverage from 100% poverty to 133% poverty if we can do it with these restrictions. And the Obama administration said, okay, because that was better than nothing. And now with the block grants, it goes the opposite direction. And that ER doctor knew it. And so Pence was just stuck with the answer of like, well, I mean, he said the waiver thing twice. And he said, well, I think you're oversimplifying it. And the ER doctor goes, no, it's actually that simple. There are people I deal with every day who are going to lose coverage because of this. And Mike Pence has no answer. But what is also stunning when you contemplate that is there will be an occasion where Donald Trump will be in front of some reporters during the debates, some other instance. There's never an opportunity when they do it at the, out in front of the helicopter or whatever it is, where it's all loud, where they have multiple questions. But on a debate stage, you never hear that level of depth of questions. And it is so relevant in the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. And you just don't. I mean, that moment's really stunning.
Yeah, I think this is part of like social media actually being useful in this way, is that like so many journalists are concerned with just continuing access to all these institutions and these people. We need to start planning people at rallies and events and like giving them questions or having experts like that at everything.
And the thing is that even reporters who want to maintain access, even the ones who don't, it's very hard to get that exchange. So we have that exchange about the it's very hard to get that exchange because they won't stick around for the second question. Certainly Mike Pence won't. But we had that press conference. Do we pull that? The one where they came out of the House. Well, we'll do that maybe another time because all right, I'll take a phone call here. Got a lot of people on the hold. What is the? I want to get maybe some Iowa people in, but I don't know the. Calling from a 551 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Ben from New York.
That's not even close to Iowa. Hello, Ben. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Hey, big fan. So I'm a Jew for Bernie, and I've encountered a lot of like self-loathing Jew smears thrown at me from my right-wing Jewish family, and I kind of just wanted to know your thoughts on how best to respond.
That must be very fun.
Oh, it's amazing.
But what is the basis? Because of Israel?
Yeah, Israel mainly.
Well, all right. This is what I do with people like that, and I think this is actually. I mean, I think this is it's effective both rhetorically, but it also is an expression of my feeling. Is that people who support the Netanyahu government and are uncritical of Israel are going to be more responsible for who are the ones who are actually endangering Israel's existence. Because the reality is, like it or not, public sentiment is moving away from Israel in this country. And within the Democratic Party, it is moving away to the extent that it's there. It's only in the it's maintaining, if not growing, in the Republican Party amongst Christian Zionists. But in terms of Jews and in terms of the Democratic Party, it is diminishing. And we saw that with guys like Tim Kaine even and others refusing to go when Netanyahu spoke in front of Congress. And there's going to be more and more pushes to withhold aid from the Democrats. I mean, from the Israel. And if the Democrats ever get in control, you're going to see a lot more of that. And it's not just going to come from Bernie. It's going to come from because the Democratic electorate is fed up, and that's not going to change. And so Israel needs to hear the critiques of the United States, because in the past, it has been the way that they've dealt with their own domestic politics. Starting with Bush, he allowed them, pushed them to get more aggressive. And what's going to happen ultimately, I am concerned as a supporter of the state of Israel and a deep believer in its right to exist, that it faces an existential threat going down the path that it's been going down, because at one point it's going to get very isolated. And that is not a good situation to be in. And so my argument is like it's actually their attitude that is actually endangering Israel, because they're not looking, they're trying to push a square peg into a round hole. And, they can't control the way that the rest of the country is going. And the Democratic Party, if the Democratic Party maintains control of Congress, as I suspect they will, there's very rarely going to be times where you're going to have a Republican control of all three branches of the government. I think it 10, 15 years from now, maybe even 5, it's quite possible to me that a U.S. Congress will say we're going to make aid to Israel contingent upon X, Y, and Z. And Israel won't be able to be in a position to respond, and they're going to be isolated. And it is not a good situation for Israel to become even more of a pariah in international circles. That's what I think.
And I agree. And I just think the disconnect between like the right-wing Jewish community in America is just insane from the majority of Americans that are Jewish, because we know that like 70% of American Jews vote Democrat. And I think if Bernie ends up winning and he conditions the aid to Israel, like I see that as like a Brexit type of moment for the right-wing Jewish community, because I just don't know how they're going to handle themselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, it's frustrating. It's not a very good faith argument to tell your kid that you're just a self-hating Jew because you're supporting Bernie. And so I would approach it with this, like, well, take the higher ground. Say that you're the one who's actually protecting the interests of Israel, because, friends don't like friends drive drunk. That's what this is. This is the kind of situation it is.
Yeah.
Appreciate the call.
Going along, baby.
Thanks. Thank you. Appreciate you. You too. Calling from a 204 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Kind of situation it is. Yeah. Appreciate you going along, baby. Thank you. Appreciate it.
204. 204. Wait till they catch up.
Calling from a 204 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
This hasn't happened in a long time.
Appreciate you going along, baby.
Okay. Yeah,
Go for it.
Right now,
We're in the second.
We're in the second loop of this. All right. Sorry. I mean, I don't know how much patience I should have with that, but I don't have enough. Calling from a 570 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
570.
Yes. Yes, this is from Kingston?
You from
Pennsylvania, I'm sorry.
All right. It's all very suspicious, but what's on your mind?
Okay, I didn't expect to get on. You guys do a great show. I've been watching back when you had the old background, but I wanted to talk about Aaron May and Jimmy Dore. Aaron May just tweeted about Trump's fake peace plan, and in that tweet...
Mate, yeah.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. But he talks about Obama in that tweet, and there's a million other things you could talk about. There's no reason to bring up Obama, who's not been in office for 3 years, and Obama was attacked by both the left and the right on his views on Israel. I mean, he could have tweeted about Trump and Kushner getting a massive real estate deal in the Golden Heights. When Trump went against decades of U.S. policy and to give the Golden Heights back to Israel. I mean, Dore and Mate basically misrepresent what people say all the time. They ignore evidence that goes against their narrative. They use false equivalences all the time. And the major problem is that they're not bringing people on the right to the side of the progressives. Okay, if you look at their, Twitter replies or their YouTube comments, it's all mostly right-wingers saying how they just love how they crap on the Democrats all the time. I mean, Dore has basically one video about Trump to 15 videos about the Democrats, the media lying about Ukraine.
Look, listen. Here's my opinion of that. I'm not familiar with Aaron Mate's work that much, to the extent that I've been, gotten in conversations with him. I found his stuff to be pretty weak, but it's all been about, his claims about Russiagate or whatever it is. I can tell you this: I think it's perfectly legitimate to criticize the Democrats, and if you decide that that's you want to make that your primary function, that's fine. My problem with Jimmy Dore is that he is not bright, and that I mean, I'm not being facetious about this. I mean, I think he's smart, but he doesn't really do his homework. He's talking out of his ass. He hides behind being a comedian when it's convenient for him, but then he speaks with authority when it doesn't. This is a guy who did not understand what a filibuster was. Imagined some type of by magic the Democrats would be able to stop Trump's appointees. He is a guy who started criticizing Bernie because Bernie wouldn't go on a show. He's driven by his own ego and his own whatever problems he has. He's lied to me, in the context of us debating some of these issues, And I think his his whole exhortations about people, look, I think some of his critiques are legit. I think a broken clock is right twice a day, but too many times he's just pursued things like Seth Rich, he was proclaiming that he had a deep understanding of Parkinson's and could tell from the videotape of Hillary Clinton that she had Parkinson's. I mean, this is just, it's garbage. And I think it screws up a lot of, we fish, or used to, I think, in similar ponds. And it was like he's pouring dangerous chemicals into it, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, exactly, Sam, and it's been a pleasure. But Dore has a video that says that DNC New York chair endorses Trump over Tulsi, which is definitely not true. I mean, he attacked Lawrence O'Donnell about Trump getting his loans from Deutsche Bank co-signed by Russian state-owned bank, and more evidence of that has come out. I mean, where was Dore's video when Trump went unexpected to Walter Reed? I mean, and like you pointed out, this is the guy who said that Hillary Clinton had Parkinson's.
Right. I mean, I don't know if Jimmy Dore will do a story about the cuts to Medicaid that will cost thousands of lives. I don't know if he'll do a story, I would hope, about our record number of bombs that we've dropped on Afghanistan.
Exactly.
In
Pac-Man
2019.
just did a video about that. Where's Dore's video on that? Or a tweet?
I mean, look, you can't expect everybody to do every story that you want them to, but I think the totality of what you're saying is accurate. Appreciate the call.
Thank you very much.
Also, Dore got rolled by Ron Paul.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's true. He was on the Jesse Ventura. He's filling in on RT for Jesse Ventura. And, I don't begrudge anybody going on filling in for anybody on any show, frankly, or any network. I don't care about that. But when you let Ron Paul come on and just basically roll you, then that's pretty pathetic. But he's just a comedian. He's just a comedian. Well, I got news for you. I watched that segment. Not one laugh. Not a single laugh. Wasn't funny. So what's so comedic about it? Right? He's a comedian. But
I thought it was funny when Ron Paul said, well, libertarians were not necessarily for workers having, rights.
Right, exactly. And Dore thought that he was going after. Well, we got to play that maybe Monday, because that was pretty. I found it funny, but I don't think Jimmy was making a joke. What is this Buttigieg thing? Oh, we got to do this Pam Bondi reading the note. We forgot about this. Speaking of funny. Pam Bondi, she was the former Attorney General of Florida. She was investigating Donald Trump, one of his like school scams or something. And then he gave her $25,000 for her campaign. And then the investigation got wrapped up. And now she's like making $100,000 a month working for like Bahrain or something. Who is it? I'm not quite sure, but this is a side gig for her. So to be fair, this is a side gig for Pam Bondi, and maybe she's, not spending as much time prepping as maybe you would think. Now, understand these questions. The president's lawyers know these questions are coming. But both sides, for the most part, know that the questions are coming. So they've prepared for it. That's how they know. Like, it's not like in the last minute, like, Jim, you take this one. No, they've prepared for it. Because the senators from their own house basically asked them about the questions.
I imagine Bondi let her staff prepare for it.
Well, and sometimes they drop the ball. Here she is.
He remained on the board.
She's talking about Hunter Biden. How long was he on?
Until April of
what the hell is going on there?
2019. We also know that.
Yeah. That was very strange. She was, I don't know if she was
Attorney General of Florida.
Yeah.
A big state.
It's a big state. That's a big state. Now, to be fair,
organization abilities.
The last governor, and I think she worked under Rick Scott, right? Why would you, if you were Rick Scott, why would you want someone like that as your attorney general? Well, I can tell you that Rick Scott had to resign from a company that was fined, the largest ever fine for Medicaid fraud in the history of the country. And he had to plead the fifth. I think it was 51 times. So you may be very, very hesitant to get a really diligent attorney general to be working if you're in a position to in any way sort of appoint someone like that or encourage. I think, is that elected? Is Pam, was she elected? Is that position elected in Florida? I think it could be. Nevertheless, I'm sure that it was a comfort to Rick Scott to know that Pam Bondi was the attorney general.
Elected, yeah.
There you go. Well, that's why she got $25,000 from Donald Trump for her reelection. Here's Ben Carson. Let's do this one. Forget it. We'll do that at a different time because we don't have time. All right, I'm going to take one or two more calls, and then I'm going to get out of here, folks. We'll be back Monday. Let's see. Who do we got here? It's been waiting for a long time. Calling from a 208 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Sean from Washington.
Sean, you got to talk into your phone, bud.
Oh, I'm so sorry. This is, I'm Sean from Washington.
You got to even get even closer to your phone.
Let's try that. Is that better?
Yes, actually, yeah. There's one of the things about the phone these days. You got to put it right up to your mouth.
All right. Well, thanks for the shot at it. I just had a quick question, and then I had one quick thing. So I'm actually Sean from Idaho, and I noticed there's another guy who called in saying Sean from Idaho. So I just wanted to say I'm Sean from Idaho. I just live in Washington. There can be only one.
Right.
So Martin Luther King Day, I was at the Capitol in Olympia with the Washington Education Association doing our lobby day. And I got the chance to meet and speak with Jay Inslee for a little bit. And despite my efforts, he refused to, on the spot, endorse Bernie Sanders.
Nice try.
But I gave it my best. And then I just wanted to say, we were talking about Jim Risch the other day in Idaho. And I wanted to just point out some of the appeal that I see with Sanders in places like Idaho. I just wanted to highlight that the Democratic caucus, or primaries, caucus in Idaho in 2016 was the largest caucus in the history of the United States.
Wow.
And it overwhelmingly went to Sanders.
I mean, that tells me that at the very least within the Democratic Party, he's wildly supported. But the real question is in the general election, right?
Well, yeah, and then I was looking before while I was waiting, and Evan McMullen actually got like a really high amount of votes, and I think that has to do with like a high Mormon population in the state.
Interesting.
But if you add up the people who went for Johnson and Stein, like I went Stein, and Evan McMullen, it was within about 9% of Trump.
Wow. So, I mean, there you go.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. And then I had just a really quick question I can take off the air. It might be a better like Jamie or Michael question because it kind of has to do with the manufacturer consent.
Okay.
But do you have any anxiety or feeling? Some stories just came out the other day about the stock market getting really worried about Sanders. Do you have any anxiety that these organizations will deploy sort of the same old like sanctions or, get rid of a socialist democratic government in Central America playbook in the United States if Sanders gets elected? We're due for a recession anyway, and if they just tank it for a little bit and make everybody think that it was because of Sanders, they could potentially shore up a lot of, at least not have to worry about anything like Sanders for a couple election cycles.
Well, I mean, look,
immediate impact of these policies.
Well, I think it wouldn't. I don't know if there's people on the stock market who can do anything about that, frankly, and without hurting themselves. But the Fed could decide to not be so loose with its money and not feel bullied in that, in the same way that they might be under Trump. I mean, I think that there's a chance that we're going to have some type of, I would imagine that the stock market would go down if Sanders comes in. I mean, I'm just thinking like, there's a lot of basically, just for instance, the for-profit college thing. I've used this as an example multiple times before. On the day Donald Trump got elected, the day after, all those stocks went through the roof because of regulatory actions that the Obama administration was taking. They were basically saying like, you need better accrediting agencies to accredit you as colleges, or you're not going to be able to get student loans anymore. And student loans is how a lot of these universities make all their money. And the day that Donald Trump got elected, they all knew that they were going to be able to, they were back in business, essentially.
Right. I'm worried about not so much like a conspiracy, like in a smoky room, but just sort of natural inputs to capitalism. Like, would Sanders possibly signal or send, signals to investors that would make them pull out and have them be like a self?
Well, it's possible. I mean, I would be surprised if the stock market didn't go down with the election of either Warren or Sanders, for that matter. Because the way that they make business, I mean, the way that they make money in various sectors within our economy is by taking advantage of workers and consumers. Right. And our environment. And if somebody's going to come down, I mean, this is a lot of the profits that we see being made come because they offload externalities onto the rest of us. So if I know that I don't have to get rid of my waste properly, but I can dump it into the streams because Donald Trump has rolled back the EPA regulations, that's going to save me money. That's going to put money in my pocket. And so if I would imagine, regardless of which Democrat gets elected, you're going to see like the stock market go down or not increase at the same rate because they're getting away with a lot of stuff. But I don't think that any of these people are prepared to tank things to teach everybody a lesson. That's not the way that they work, dude. They're gonna try and make as much money as they can under any circumstance.
That's very comforting to me.
But I will say this. You're going to see, I think there's going to be a significant number of Democrats who are going to stand in the way of Bernie's agenda if he gets elected president. I think there would be some of that even with Warren too, frankly. And, Bernie's basically theory of the case is that he's going to win with a new coalition of voters, and those coalition of voters are going to put pressure on Democrats in the Senate and maybe some Republicans. So I wouldn't go as far as what you're talking about, that they would purposely tank it. But I think that there would be like, I mean, I think there's going to
they would message politically to leverage sort of, I don't want to say naturally occurring, but a non-conspiratorial drop in the stock market. And do you think that's something that
they're doing that now?
Talk about organizing against?
They're doing that now. They argue that now. But what's more important is that people understand that, 80%, 50% of Americans don't own anything in the stock market. And 80% of the stock market is owned by 20% of the population. And so really the answer is like, it doesn't really matter that much what happens with the stock market. That's the real reality in terms of the economy anyways. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, man.
All right, one last call and then we'll get out of here, I promise. Calling from a 467 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? Ladies and gentlemen, it's the last call, so we have 51 people on hold. We'll take more calls on Monday. Gosh. 467 area code. Who's this?
How you doing?
Good. Who is it?
This is Richard from Sweden.
Richard from Sweden. All right, got to be quick.
Gotta be quick. Yeah, well, I'm the last caller. That's too bad. I had a kind of interesting question here. You know what? You had a discussion the other day about why people voted for Trump, and if it was only material driven. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you tried to argue with Jamie and Michael about that there were probably other forces in play besides the material needs of people, and I believe you're right.
Okay.
You know the Maslow pyramids of needs?
Yes.
When you reach a certain height on that pyramid, you know, you have these food, shelter, healthcare, and stuff like that.
Yep.
And then other forces come into play. And I think that if you live in a Western industrialized society, you can probably see that because we have kind of the same dynamic in Sweden as you have in America. We have a far-right anti-immigration kind of a on the rise party here. And this is probably one of the best countries in the world, kind of, you know, when it comes to the welfare state. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And you have Norway, even better, with the oil. They have it. I mean, their welfare state is just 100% secure. And you had Breivik killing 80 people. So I think you're right. There are other things besides material needs that are, you know, coming into play when it comes to electing a person like Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's. I mean, for me, that's self-evident. I mean, I think, you know, the question is how are material needs defined? That's the next question that we got into in that argument. And, you know, from my perspective, material needs are food, shelter, health care. You could argue education.
Sure.
And, you know, I think when you start getting into the perception of threat and precariousness, that is a psychological reaction that is divorced from reality.
True.
I think then you're not talking about material need. You're talking about psychological needs. And
yeah, alienation, isolation, and boredom. I mean, that's a really potent cocktail, dangerous cocktail. You know, really, that's you know, and the threat that people perceive. I mean, it's worse if people lose something than if they want to gain something. Almost, you know what I mean?
I think you're absolutely right. I think that dynamic is the case, and I think that in this country, the loss for, I think for, you know, to the extent that there's any of these swing voters, you know, because a lot of these people voted for Romney, the vast majority of them, Mitt Romney, who was, you know, rather different than Donald Trump, except for the fact that he blamed the 47%, as it were, and felt that had his last name been, you know, Mexican or, you know, Hispanic, that he would have already been elected president, according to Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
That there is, a sense of loss that white males in particular have in this country because they are not centered in our culture the way that they used to be. And
we have the same dynamic in Sweden. I'm sad to say we have the same dynamic in Sweden. And this is from your point of view, when everything you talk about, healthcare and free college, we have it all. But there are still people, especially on the media, the internet, that are just complaining all day long about everything.
Now, I will say this, that I think that problem becomes more acute when you are also suffering from economic deprivation. And I do think that some of that anger can be ameliorated with material benefit. I don't think, but that's different from saying, so like from an electoral standpoint, I think it makes sense for to offer this in addition to like, we should have what you have in Sweden, frankly, as far as I'm concerned. But from an electoral standpoint, I think you can convince some of those voters, not many, but some, with just exclusively material benefits. But I think that like the receptiveness to those material benefits, I think, are greater with these people coming from one person because of who they are versus another, even if they're being offered the same thing, because of existing racial and gender biases that exist in this country.
Yeah.
And so...
Sure, but you know what? Sorry. You know what? About 1 million people are voting for this kind of a far-right last election. 1 million people out of 10 million voted for this. And that's a huge number.
Yep.
They got about 15 or 16% of the votes, mainly from disgruntled social democrats, I think, and young voters. Mainly about the influx of refugees in this country, and still we have a pretty good country. It's a very good country to compare.
Yeah.
Even with European standards. But I'm concerned about the right wing going off the rails in Britain, in Hungary, in Poland.
Yeah.
You can't even talk about the Polish corporation, with in the Holocaust. You can't even talk about that. They're going to make it illegal. I mean, this is serious stuff.
Yeah, it's scary. Well, listen, I appreciate the phone call. Thank you. It was interesting.
Yeah, I'll call it.
Oh, sorry. Have to go. Did not mean to hang up on you like that, but I was getting an itchy trigger finger. All right, folks, we'll be back Monday. We've got a show on Monday. Then we're going to be back Monday night with coverage of the Iowa caucuses. We're still basically getting an array of people who are going to be on the program. Tuesday, we will be not 100% sure what we're going to be doing during the day, but we will definitely be here at night. Then we'll be here on Wednesday. Then we'll be here on Thursday, and then Friday and Friday night. So a busy week for us next week. See you then.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.